Jules in the background will press record, and we're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, if there's any technical hitches, but also we'll make the recording available afterwards, so you've got the opportunity to watch it again, because there's no doubt going to be lots of great information that you're going to want to capture as you go along. We will be also sharing the slide deck at the end of the session, so if you want to take notes, great, but you will have access to the slides. So I think that's most of my housekeeping type stuff. We've got Jules in the background. If there are any technical difficulties, please jot away in the chat. If you do have technical problems, we often find going out, coming back in. So it's the IT equivalent of plugging it, unplugging it. It usually works. If we lose you for whatever reason, we will come straight back online. So let's hope we have a nice, smooth session online. And without further ado, I'm going to put you in the very safe hands of Erno. Erno's from the University of Exeter Business School, where he's a professor in entrepreneurship and the director of the recently created Centre for Entrepreneurship. So Erno, you will very quickly realise, spent 12 years in France in different business schools, researching and teaching how individuals transform ideas into new businesses. So we're partnered with the University of Exeter on this Future Focus programme, which is ERDF funded, and we'll be working with all of you to make sure that not only can you get the support of the sessions today, but we can work with you after these sessions to see what additional support you may need from any of our partners through the Future Focus programme. So without further ado, I'm going to say a very warm welcome to Erno and hand the floor over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see some things on your screens when I'm sharing? So, good morning. So I'm using a Mural application for my presentation. So, and after the presentation, you have an access. I will share the access with the chat. So don't worry about taking notes. Now, here's the title of what I'm going to speak today. And it's going to be a bit of monologue. So I'm walking you through a journey that I've been thinking about how businesses usually develop their activities. And basically, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a very good service for the two persons experts who follow me, because my intention is to mix up with your thinking right now to make you consider other alternatives that there might be in terms of developing your activities. And in order to do so, I'm explaining to you a bit what do we mean by when we say that people want to predict the future or control the future, because these are the two things that I'm going to play today in my this monologue. Now, if we look at what does predicting the future mean, usually it starts with the assumption that we choose a goal. We choose an opportunity, like let's go, and my new goal is to export. So we decide a goal and then we carefully plan it to achieve that goal. And of course, part of the planning is about, what resources do I need to acquire in order to get to the right track and advance towards the goal. And we know that from the business planning modules and courses and instructions, and business plan is a tool where we actually predefine those milestones and resource needs and what kind of resources we need to acquire, where do we perhaps get those resources, how do we develop our own competencies, technologies, products, and so on. So that predicting the future is basically symbolized by this business planning approach. Now, of course, we researchers, we come to the picture, we start to create these kind of different diagrams and so on. But this is basically how the predicting the future kind of behavior takes place, where first we choose a goal and then we just decide or define what resources are needed, and we start to achieve towards the goal. Now, why do we usually do this one? Because it's comfortable to businesses and individuals in general. When you are planning about your own future, in the private life or in your business, we like to decrease the uncertainty or to have a feeling that there's less uncertainty. So we plan well and we create these plans, predictions, and so on. And if you look at what we have available nowadays and what the, let's say, management and strategy fields have produced, we have all kinds of tools, SWOT analysis, competitor analysis, market research, marketing plans, financial plans, and projections. Basically everything that we usually then lump together as a business plan. And it's all right. They work very well when we work in an environment which has some degree of predictability. And when we say predictability, we usually say that we can calculate risks. So we can calculate some odds. It's like playing a bit of poker or going to the casino. You can always calculate the odds, and then you can take a calculated risks. But it requires that you can predict what are the likely scenarios that might appear in the future. But they work less when there's an uncertainty. And uncertainty means that you can't even calculate the risks. You can't estimate what is the likely outcome and so on. So everything we have developed so far in the business schools and engineering schools and so on, they go to this kind of environment where when people are not sure what to do, when they are novices, they usually rely on these kind of predictive strategies. And it's easy to teach. You know, if a business school student remembers something after graduation, it's usually the SWOT, and they use SWOT everywhere. So it's easy to teach these kind of tools which rely on this kind of predictive understanding, and particularly novice people use it a lot. But now, like Mike Tyson famously said, you know, everybody has a plan until I punch them in the face. And we could say that we have a lot of punching here in the business environment recently. When you look at what has been happening, we have the COVID, which is punching a lot of small businesses with the red tape and so on. We have now also the pandemic, which is causing severe restrictions on our interactions, on our doings at the individual level and at the business level. So there's lots of uncertainty that is right now in our environments, which is why we say that right now, predicting what will happen, even in the near future, is a bit difficult to do. So what should we do it then? So if this kind of predicting the future doesn't work anymore, if planning doesn't work, so what can we actually do? Now, 4 reactions that we can actually do right now. Let me see this one. So we can try to predict, continue the same path with the business planning approach and say that what will be the new normal be? So we try to predict what will be the new normal in a few months or a few years. Or we can adopt the completely opposite, which is be a passive. We wait and adapt once we will see what happens. Or we can fight against these changes that are taking place. You know, we try to push for a return to a normal. Or the 4th one is basically what I'm advocating here today is that we can actively start to shape and create the new normal. So we take the responsibility of trying to create the new normal rather than trying to wait for it or try to see what will happen and then we just adapt. Now, when I say that controlling the future, when I use the word control, it doesn't really mean control in a sense that you go and control what your daughter is doing right now. Control usually refers to what can you do with what you have already right now. If somebody asks you to go and dance ballet, Erno, I will say, well, it will take 12 years before I can work to dance ballet. So it's not under my control. But if somebody asks, Erno, go and do some hiking in the Alps, in the French Alps, then I said, yes, that's under my control. I can start to contact some refuge places I know the Club Alpin Français, so it's under my control. I can immediately start to do things because I used to do hiking and so on in the Alps. So when we say that take control back is focus on doing what you already can do right now. And then you start to shape the environment and the outcomes through your own actions. So that's what we say, that's the basic starting point when you control the future. Now, an entrepreneur, how does an entrepreneur who is adopting this one, how do they think? They basically say, who does business plans? Who does planning? I don't need to predict the future. Instead, I'm going to influence and shape it, or in best cases, actually create it. But what I will do is I co-create it with partners, customers, suppliers, and other self-selected stakeholders. I will work with whoever is willing to work with me. And here, the emphasis is in the co-creation side. I'm not doing it alone because I know a lot of other businesses. I know a lot of other entrepreneurs, and I know a lot of non-entrepreneurs, professionals in other sectors. And I also have my partners, my customers and suppliers with my current business. So I'm going to co-create the future with them. So this is my way of controlling what will happen. And we have examples of entrepreneurs who actually, in their actions, when they explain what they're actually doing, and when you observe them, what they are doing, you can realize that they're actually using this kind of control-oriented actions. We have, mega stars like people who created a Starbucks. We have our favorite star in the UK, Richard Branson. But then we have these local people also too who manifest similar kind of behavior. And if I look at, for example, the Starbucks example, if you start to read the red part there, in 1971, when Howard Schultz wanted to create his own coffee shop, if he had started to plan, look at the statistics, look at the market growth rates, he or anybody could have observed that the coffee consumption has been in decline for 20 years in a row. So there's no way that you could have presented an interesting business plan about creating a coffee shop at that time. Now, that was not his focus at that time. He wanted to create one shop, and that's what he could create. You couldn't even get a cup of coffee from there because you just bought beans or ground coffee from him. But over the years, he opened up a second shop, then a next one, and then the next 100. And in the end of the day, he ended up having more than 20,000 different Starbucks coffees around the world. He never had a plan to create 20,000. He never predicted that one day there will be 20,000. He just focused on doing the first one and then the next one. If we look at our Sir Richard Branson, when he created Virgin Atlantic, he didn't have a business plan. He was not predicting how much growth there are going to be in the airline industry. Basically, he just said, we can do it better. We can serve the customers better. And he phoned to Boeing and asked, well, can you buy a second-hand plane, but that you agree, take it back, buy it back after the first 12 months, if it doesn't work out. So that was what was under his control. He could afford leasing or renting or buying a plane for 12 months and just to see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, they take the plane back, and that's the downsize. So he found a way he was more interested about improving the service, the delivery, and the experience of the clients who use airlines, and he knew that they can do it better, and he was protecting himself from the downsize, not looking at the upside, which was some kind of market projections and so on. We can find similar examples all over the world. Here's a person from Sweden who created the Ice Hotel back in the time, and when he started working in the cold Swedish Lapland, where there's not so much light during the winter, even the tourism office was closed during the winter because they thought that nobody wants to come to a cold, dark Swedish Lapland. But now there's a flourishing tourism business there, and he created the concept of ice hotel, not because the business plan showed that there's a room for having these kind of hotels, but because they accidentally 2 different steps ended up with the concept when they were doing what was under their control. And most recently, when I've been trying to get a sense of, what's happening here in our own area, watching TV and the documentaries has been a very interesting way of seeing. And a month ago, I think I saw this Cornwall, this fishing life, and there was a very nice episode about how the fishermen, what are they doing now that we have these lockdown and restrictions and so on. And there we could observe. So I was trying to find then the newspaper articles about them to see what they're actually doing. Now, here is a very nice small story description about this Buck and his wife, Nicola, now have a roaring trade when they sell directly to customers using Facebook, social media to commercialize. So here we can start to identify interestingly these self-volunteered stakeholders. Wife, if I remember correctly, his wife was had a nail salon, and when they were forced to shut down in the lockdown restrictions, the wife became a stakeholder that started to help his husband to take orders, to plan when things are going to fish is going to be delivered to customers. And they were started to have a direct contacts with customers. Earlier, they just delivered it to the auction, let's call it auction house, because I don't know the exact terminology. So fishermen brought the catch to auction house, and they were sold there directly to different customers. So Buck didn't have a contact with the direct customers. But because of the lockdown, now their business is flourishing. They are delivering themselves. They are treating those fishes so they can be transported to the customers. They are driving themselves to the customers. They are seeing the customers. They are discussing with the customers, and customers giving them direct feedback. And they are using new channels to communicate with the customers. The same thing in the same village. There was a big restaurant in the harbor. No clients, big spaces. So when they started to be small, the restrictions were started to be eased. He started to rent all his spaces for local pop-up restaurants. So there's a food court. Instead of him running again a restaurant, now he's actually managing properties and selling them to people who want to sell their own food or own preparations to tourists. And that's so successful that he's not getting back anymore. So he's not fighting to get back to the old normal. He has now new normal, and he helped to create it. Lots of local people now have possibilities to sell their preparations, their food, thanks to this entrepreneur who transformed his restaurant into a food court. The same thing when you look at what other businesses are doing, the same area, they have sheds and garages, and now they are using those ones to process their catches so that they can be transported by themselves or by their neighbors or other people who have trucks and lorries to directly to clients. So they are recreating the whole industry, what used to be fishing industry, into something new. Now, so when we speak about controlling the future, the entrepreneurs, they don't have usually very clear goals that reach beyond years of development like we usually see in the business plans, or we tended to see in the business plans. They start to work now under what is their control. You know, we speak about available means. And available means can be related to many things. They can be direct resources. They can be also your knowledge, your education, your contacts, and so on. And the goals will emerge gradually. You do the first thing. First client phones to you and asks, "Can I have 5 fishes this evening?" Just the first step. Well, you say, yes, I will be delivering it this evening to you. And then the words get around that he's delivering fresh fishes. You can even phone to him when he's on the sea, about to come back, and you can still order, can you catch these and these for me for this evening? And they will deliver it and so to them. So they start what they can already do. And we say that the controlling the future is about going through what kind of means do I have, like the fisherman had. I have my wife, I have a truck, I have a carrot, I can get some cold boxes and so on, so I can start to deliver for new clients locally. I can also ship to Paris, to restaurants and so on, because they have also now contacted me because they can't get fish in Paris or in London. Now, so I like to speak about this kind of effectual planning rather than business planning. So you create value what you already can, what is available to you, no matter how limited your resources are in the beginning. So it's not about think big and make it bigger. That's usually how business planning, when I was visiting Aalto University a few years ago, the big motto was think big and make it bigger. So you need to pitch your business idea and then get venture capital funding and so on. In the effectual planning, it's not about thinking big. It's actually even though my resources are limited right now, what can I do with that to put them into action? So really the first step in this process of effectual planning is really to start to make a relook about who you are, what do you know, and who do you know. And you make like an inventorium of what's available to me, what can I control and mobilize, what can I combine in a new ways. So the idea here is that when you think about new possibilities, what you should or you could do in your business is you can start small, but start now. That's the most important idea. If I leave you anything after my monologue is start now, even though you would start small. It will end up leading to a bigger things eventually. So to compare the predicting the future and then the controlling the future, predicting the future, you go after big opportunities. And that's why you need business plans to convince external people and yourself that yes, there's a bright new future waiting for us. And you know that people say that if there needs to be a risk, without risk, there's no reward. If there's no risk, everybody would be doing it already. So usually you identify those interesting opportunities. The bigger the risk is, the bigger the opportunity and payoff will be. So that's the gambling kind of developing your activities. And that's what we right now have been doing for the past decades, because that's what we know how to do it. That's the business planning approach. Now, the controlling the future as compared is take action right now and choose those new goals which are more immediate goals, and it represents an affordable loss. So the second principle of this approach is you choose to develop your business and you choose new projects based on the Richard Branson type of thinking. Well, we don't know if it's going to work, but we are going to give it a try. If it doesn't work, we do something else. So you choose to do new things for your business based on this principle of, well, it represents an affordable loss. There are other stages in this process, and I'm not going to run them through. That's a matter a whole training session. But in the beginning, you have these available means, and you generate new goals, immediate goals that you can start to take action now. And you choose, if you have several different things that you could do with the available means, you use the affordable loss principle to choose those ones that you can, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, we can do something else. And the process have other different stages. Now, just to stop here in terms of the process and going to this, what is the question which is for me essential in adopting this kind of approach is, what is the biggest obstacle in developing something new? That's a question to you. I'm not sure if you have an answer right now, because I'm going to, because this is a monologue, don't forget this one, this is a monologue. My point of view is that the biggest obstacle is the mental models that you have about your current business and the world around you. So the biggest obstacle in developing something new is not COVID, it's not Brexit. It's basically how you see your business and the world. You know, mental models is basically something, if I would interview you and ask, okay, explain me the nature of your business, or explain me something about your business. It's your thought process about how something works. So that's a mental model. I can ask you, how does a school work for your kids? So you say in the morning we bring them, in the afternoon we pick it up, and school does this one, and home we have to do this one. So there's a mental model about school, there's mental models about everything. And there's a mental model about your business. So in the face of uncertainty, there's a tendency that we keep fighting to keep the old model working, because we are so comfortable with the old model. And in this, if you think about what is the mental model of your current business, questions like, this is how things are done in my business. We produce, we manufacture, we deliver. Our clients are, and they want these kind of things, and usually they pay us like this, and they would never ever do this one. And we know our clients since and since. And then you describe the back office. We know these suppliers, we have these partners, and we've been working with them, and they want this and that one. And in our own employees, this is the core things that they actually are doing so well, and that's why we are employing them. That's how we recruit them. Our main activities are these and these and these, and we are known for doing this and that. So we have a reputation which is based on this and this. So this is the mental model about your own business. And how does it work is that when you have this understanding on how things work, it guides your own behavior in terms of how you run your business, how you develop your business, what kind of decisions you make, what is doable for you and what is not doable. We haven't done that one before, and we are not going to do it because it's going to tarnish our reputation and so on. And the more successful you are, the better results you have over time, the more reinforcement it will give to your mental model. It works, it works, it works. And when there's a crisis, when there's this kind of COVID, Brexit kind of things, it's really creating even more uncertainty, because something has been working so well during the past years or even a decade. So your mental model is very strong about how business should be done in your area. So it actually dictates how you understand the business. And it becomes very difficult to break out from that kind of cycle. Now, there's a nice tool here. You might recognize, some of you might recognize it. It's the business model Canva. It's not the business plan, which is usually a document describing how do we reach a interesting opportunity and potential. Business model Canva is a tool that describes basically how do you create, deliver, and capture value. And this one is a mental representation of how the business is done. So you describe who are your customers, what is your value proposition for them. So how do you then deliver your products and services? What kind of revenues you get? How do you organize your own activities? What kind of resources you need to do it? What kind of activities you need to do in order to deliver that kind of value proposition and the products and services? And then what kind of partners you need to make it run? And then it boils down into cost structure that you have. That's a mental representation of a business. And we are teaching people to map your business idea into this kind of canvas. So you can then try to redesign, try to communicate about it. Now, when you are very successful in your business in the past, or you have lots of experience in working in that industry, then when there's an uncertainty, what you need to do to get started, you need to shred those models. You need to put your Canva, your mental model in a shredder and start to see again, now what do we do now with what I actually have right now. Now, in the light of this kind of thinking and this approach, what Socrates said a few years ago starts to make a bit more sense. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old business, but in building the new business. So don't try to fight putting the old order back in place where you were comfortable, where your business was comfortable, but change your mindset into seeing, okay, what is the new thing that we can build right now? And then it will become the new normal, that what we create or where I participate creating the new normal. So question about export or not, if you apply these two approaches to exporting question, if you are comfortable in working in the predicting the future type of approach, and that's the business planning approach, so you start to work on the key questions like, how is the market in Germany? How big is the market in Europe? Should I go to Asia or America, Latin America, and so on? What kind of growth rates are there in different markets? Where are the gaps that markets are not served yet? What kind of societal trends are pushing those markets so they are favorable that in the future they will be even bigger? And can I then acquire external resources, whether it's a funding or knowledge, in order to attack then that kind of market? So you choose the most attractive market or the opportunity. And usually it comes with the fact that it also represents a bigger risk. If there's no risk, there's no reward. Or do you more think about exporting as effectual planners do? Well, I already have a contacts in certain countries. They might not be the most lucrative markets and so on, but actually I know people there. I know some actors who are willing to, receive our product or service. So let's see if it works. I have nothing to lose by making one shipment and so on. So I start now, even though I start very small. So I choose an opportunities based on the fact that it represents an affordable loss. Let's try if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll do something else. So that's basically the question that you can ask yourself when you are going the thought process of what should I do in terms of finding export markets? Should I do it? Should I not do it? If I do it, how should I do it and approach it? What is my preferred way of doing? Where am I comfortable? And when you go out and express that, yes, I'm interested about finding the biggest opportunities to do it, then you have all kinds of helps and resources and tools to do it, because the whole industry of supporting people to start businesses and to grow businesses goes around this business planning type of behavior. We have much less guidance, help, tutoring, mentoring about this effectual development of your own businesses, but it is there. We have examples and so on, and it is a valid and viable way of doing it. It might not lead in as sexy or attractive immediate outcomes in terms of getting external funding, so you can then socialize, put it in the social media that again somebody acquired millions of euros to get into a new kind of development phase. So that's my monologue. That's how I try to shake you up before I let you continue with the two experts in terms of the export area. As again, I will put it in the chat, access to this mural, my slides, my ideas. So everybody, I welcome you to go and visit it if you want. You have also section above here. If you have any comments, suggestions, and so on, you can just write it during this week, next week, and so on, because I will keep this mural open. So it might be perhaps a way for some of you to get to the track of this kind of effectual planning and trying to control your future instead of trying to predict the future. Okay. I'm done. If you have any questions, I will try to answer.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. It's so helpful just to have kind of a bit of a framework to have a look at how no doubt everybody in the room has been thinking and feeling. You know, we've gone through 3 lockdowns, haven't we? We've had sort of 3 opportunities, I guess, to kind of reimagine our businesses, at the same time trying to hold on to what we've got and look after our staff and all of those kind of challenges. So really keen to see if there are any questions, observations in the audience around how you've been coping during this time, how you've noticed your thought processes perhaps have adapted. I know from working with many entrepreneurs and very many small businesses in Cornwall, there's an amazing instinct that entrepreneurs have, and they instinctively know the direction to take, but the mental model, I think, that you talk about during lockdown, I think has been very interesting and very challenging for people. It really has been a roller coaster of thoughts. So I'm really open, and we've got a little bit of time for any questions if anybody wants to share their experience of what they've been through, or particularly I think the things from what Erno's talked about that resonates. Everybody's a bit quiet and shy this morning. Session 1, it's often the case, Erno. By session 4, they'll all be on microphone and feeding back. I think that concept of not fighting the old but building the new certainly resonated with me, because I think, from our experience of being able to actually go out and talk to our clients directly, then having to do everything online, you try to recreate what you had previously in a different way, but I think over time we've worked out actually the same thing doesn't work. You've got to try something new. So really interesting to see how that's affected people. So we've got a quiet audience today. Let's hope we have the opportunity to come back to some of the concepts that you've shared with us, and certainly some of the tools. So thank you so much, Erno. Very thought-provoking and reassuring, I think, in terms of how people want to and need to progress from here. So we really appreciate that. So I'm going to move us on to the main part of our session today. Hopefully got you thinking, and Ben is loading up his slides there. Before we get underway, I just wanted to thank you for your participation in the survey. When we build these sessions, we're always keen to get a handle on what your previous knowledge and experience is, so that we can sort of tailor the sessions to work for you. So we'd asked some questions, and we're just going to share the results with you. Before we do that, I just wanted to, sorry, my bad, I forgot to mention, if some of the things that Erno has kind of provoked in terms of your thinking, if you've got some new ideas and want to work through those ideas, often when businesses have new ideas, it's great to have some external opportunity to bounce those ideas off other people. And one of the brilliant tools that we've managed to access through the Future Focus programme and the University of Exeter delivering for us are Lego serious play sessions. And Lego have one of the most innovative organizations in the world, have captured their innovation process, and using Lego they have a brilliant opportunity for you to go through a sort of an ideas testing process. Any problem that you've got to solve, any new idea that you might want, we're offering the Lego Serious Play sessions to help you create those ideas, troubleshoot any of the opportunities, or test those ideas with other people within your team and other businesses. So we've got if you've got an idea, if you've got something that you want to test, and you want to open your mind to a brilliant and creative way of tackling that problem or solution, then on the 10th of March at 10, we're doing an online session. We'll send you some Lego beforehand. We'll send you a good brief, and it's a great opportunity whilst we're still, in this sort of lockdown phase, to kind of explore some of those new ideas. So some great stuff there from the University of Exeter. And again, thank you to Erno. Back to you and the people in the room today. We're going to move on to the next slide to just get a sense of the experience that we've got in the room around exporting. So lots of you have exported in the last 12 months, are probably exporting right now. Only a quarter of the room have not exported before, but feel like they do have a product suitable for export. So we're going to be covering sort of the really broad spectrum around exporting today. We wanted to also just get a sense from you of where those 3/4 of you that do currently export, where that is. So the next slide will give you a bit of a breakdown of where most of you are exporting. A lot of people exporting in Europe. Those are some of the highest numbers, followed by Australia. So we've got some people exporting into Australia, and I mean, we've got a lovely broad spectrum there. And I think, one of the great opportunities of these sessions is to talk to other businesses and understand where they're exporting and what their experiences of that are. We also asked you where you're interested in exporting to. So again, I'm good proportion of people really wanting to explore Europe, perhaps if you haven't already, or other areas of Europe. US is quite high up there in terms of the things that people want to explore, as is Asia and the North Atlantic Ocean. So I know that Ben and Colin have got good experience and access to a brilliant network of people that can help with that. So Ben, any sort of observations from you on those those slides?
Well, it's nice to see that people haven't been put off with Western Europe, with what's going on over the last sort of couple of months. So I mean, fascinating to see that people have already got such a huge spread of markets that they're working in, and also looking at a wide spread of markets as well. So hopefully, a lot of what we can take you through over the next four sessions really backs up a lot of the choices people are looking to make, and just make sure you can make all of those decisions safely. So not much like Erno has just been saying, sort of remove as many of the uncertain variables of making mistakes. So yeah, I'm sure it'll tie together very well.
That's brilliant. Well, Ben, I'm going to hand over. The floor is yours. Ben is an international trade advisor with the Department of International Trade, and is going to be taking you through, along with his colleague Colin, some real nuts and bolts, I think, Ben. I think it's fair to say, in terms of really getting stuck into exporting and kind of understanding the environment, the current environment that people are operating in. So Ben, over to you.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Ali. Well, hello everyone. So my name is Ben Leonard from the Department for International Trade. I've had the pleasure of meeting quite a few of you. So nice to be back into contact, and also fantastic to see so many people are already exporting. So hopefully we can help build on that over the next four sessions or so. It's really nice to be talking to you, and especially talking to people about export again, rather than doing homeschooling. So focusing on my strengths. But obviously, if we run out of time towards the end of the session, if anyone wants to cover Shakespeare, the Great Plague, or fractions, I can cover that as well. So I've got lots of experience in that now. So what we're going to do over the next month is basically a mixture within each of the sessions. So some of it will be more the kind of strategic and operational stage, so help you really build that into your plans and activities for the future. And some of it will be much more operational, so the nuts and bolts of exporting and making sure you can get the things right that will really grease the gears of international trade. So things like customs, tariffs, rules of origin, etc. So we've tried to make a mixture of those in each session, so it's not too heavy on the admin in any session, but it's also important that you obviously know that stuff as well. So the first session to kick things off is really an introduction to export. So I know quite a few of you already are exporting, but hopefully we can give you a bit of background. So for those of you that haven't exported and it's just something you're thinking about and it's your route in the future, we'll hopefully fill in a few blanks. So what we want to do is make sure that you fully understand the risks and benefits of exporting, because obviously there are huge opportunities around export, but it's not without its pitfalls as well. And it might sound a glib statement to say that the world is a very big place, but it's true, and therefore the mistakes can be bigger as well, and can be very expensive. So we want to make sure that you're as well informed as possible about all of those before we kick off. We want to make sure you can make informed decisions about any export venture. I mean, Erno's very right. You can't know everything. You've got to react to things, and sometimes if you see an opportunity, you've just got to jump for it. But I think as much background work and preparation you can do, makes it a less risky venture for a business, and means you're not going to damage the existing successful business that you've already built. So it's something that can add on rather than take away, and also, hopefully by the end of the fourth session, help you to really develop an export plan. So whether that's bare bones or really detailed will depend on the stage that your business is at. But we'd really like to make sure you walk out of these sessions with a good plan of what we're going to do next. And then obviously we can carry on working with you and helping you alongside Unlocking Potential and Future Focus Programme to make sure you've got everything you need to move forward in the future. So we see people for a lot of different regions in terms of why they are exporting or why they're thinking to export. So I don't know if any of these might match the current situation for your business. So it might just be, discovery of an opportunity in an overseas market. You might have seen a tender, you might have just had a phone call or an email from a potential customer saying, I like your product, let's place an order. And you just suddenly need to gear up and get ready to say yes. And make sure you can fulfill their expectations and put it in their hands. It may be because you've got increased competition in the current domestic market. So Cornwall does a lot of things very, very well, but what we often see is that there are a lot of people doing things very well in your particular sector with your particular type of products. So rather than trying to chip away market share from other people who are already doing it very well, maybe look at going somewhere else where there isn't that level of competition, and you can take a larger share of that market. The simple answer might just be because you're looking to access bigger markets with more customers and clients. Like I say, that there are billions of people out there, so let's go and find out where they are and who you can sell to. And also there might be a chance to increase the profitability either through increased sales or greater margins. So obviously the more you sell, economies of scale can come through, and also it may be that you can up the value of your product by exporting it to a different market as well. So you may indeed be selling it for more outside the UK than you can to the domestic audience. Risk mitigation is a big thing for some companies. So if you spread your risk over several markets, just because something is going a bit pear-shaped in one market doesn't mean that's going to be happening elsewhere. So it can help to even out things over your business. That's particularly true for seasonal businesses. So if you think about things like fashion or things that are climate or weather dependent, having different markets going up and down at different times again can help to even out things within your business. It's not often we have one of these black swan events. For about once a decade we have a major global shake-up where it might be affecting everywhere at once, but that's certainly not always the case. It can also help businesses in terms of increasing your competitive advantage. So sometimes it can do a lot of favors for your UK business being perceived as an international business. So, you know, if you're talking to potential new UK customers or clients, being able to say, oh yeah, we also sell in New York, Paris, Berlin, or whatever, you know, really helps to give you credibility and raise your business up, excuse me. And finally, you know, we often see people as well, just because in a new market, it gives the opportunity to try new things. So Ali mentioned, you know, the Lego, you know, business model. I remember many years ago with Unlocking Potential, they brought over someone who I think had the best job description in the world, which is new product development for Lego. So basically, you got to decide what the future of Lego was. And the interesting thing they talked about was that, you know, basically when they were going to try new things, so something which was a bit away from the core business, they didn't do it in their biggest markets in the US and Europe. They did it in Japan or Malaysia or Indonesia or somewhere where they had a smaller footprint. So if they made a mistake and it didn't work out, and he talked about, I think they did a series of Lego where they had bits of paper in with a box, and you could shape the bits of paper into masks and things like that, or sails for boats and things like that. Seemed like a good idea. They tried it in those markets. It didn't work, so they didn't introduce it, but they hadn't damaged their core markets. So they hadn't sort of confused their customers about what it was all about. So it gives you a bit more flexibility to try different things. So lots of reasons why you might get into export, and hopefully we can unpack and explore, you know, some of those over the next few hours. So before we start talking about your businesses, I just want to give you a chance to listen to a case study of someone else who's already done this. Okay, so I picked one that I think it's easy to understand. So it's an ice cream company based in the southwest called Granny Gothard's, and I want you to listen to it. The video might be a little bit glitchy. We had a few technical problems, but you should be able to hear what she's saying quite clearly. And what I want you to listen out for is basically, you know, the motivation to start with. So, you know, why did they go for international growth in the first place? The proposition. So what is it that they're offering out to international markets, and, you know, what they're offering out to the world? And also the strategy. So, you know, how did they go about it? How do they actually implement their plans? Okay, so I'm going to ask Jules to play the video now, because I think it ran a bit smoother through her computer.
Will it run if you're sharing, Ben?
Oh, I'll stop sharing.
Cool.
There we go.
These are our lovely ladies from Granny Gothard's, our wonderful cows that produce the amazing milk that goes into our ice cream. International trade wasn't on our agenda when we first started the business, but we soon found out that taking a regional ice cream nationally was going to present a few problems. So we decided to look further afield, and hence we moved into the international markets. We've been exporting to Dubai since October 2015. We're now on our 8th order to them, and that business is continuing month on month. This is the milk, fresh from the cows this morning, ready to go in the ice cream later on today. The challenges we expected to face when we started exporting were obviously the distribution challenges, because we have a frozen product, but we've soon found that if you work with the right partners and people who are experienced in that industry, then they can help you overcome those challenges. The route to market that we choose was to working with a reputable distributor that's based over in Dubai. The reason for that is because they're obviously aware of the markets. I think it's a key thing as a small business to make sure you work with the right partners. The next steps for Granny Gothard's on the export business is to continue developing the business in the Middle East, to look at further exports in the Far East, and also to look further afield to Australia and New Zealand. If I were going to give any tips to companies looking to export, I think the most important thing I'd say to them is work with a good partner. They are your sales team over in the country in which you're exporting. The milk was in the cows first thing this morning, it's now in the ice cream, and next stop, Dubai.
Okay, thanks, Jules. So, in terms of obviously, what we're talking about. Oh, hang on a sec. There you go. Holly, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the slides again? Yeah, that's slides again. That's great. Okay, so in terms of the motivation for them, you can see, it might be the same for some of you. Basically, they had a very good regional presence, and they found they wanted to grow their business. But when they tried to take it onto a national basis, there were already a lot of other really high quality ice cream companies around the UK. So therefore, they struggled to chip away at that market share. So instead of trying to do that, they focused on an entirely new market, which is out in the UAE. And obviously, they took their ice cream to somewhere where there isn't a dairy industry. So there was a lot less competition for what they were trying to do, particularly at the premium end of the market. In terms of the proposition, obviously, they were very much talking about a quality heritage product, something which had a good track record behind it, painted a lovely picture and had a very good story. And what she didn't mention there was that, obviously they developed their products as well. So they already, had premium quality ice cream, but for the UAE market, they developed that further and went to kind of, much more super premium products and flavors as well. So you had things like cardamom and gold leaf in the ice creams. Everything was little bod vanilla. They really tailored it to the expectations of that market. And in terms of the strategy, how they went about it, they really worked well with partners, which I think is a key thing we'll talk about over this. They worked with a partner in country who really knew that market and had the contacts and could help them establish themselves there. And they also worked with a distribution partner as well to make sure any issues they might come across with that were ironed out before they went along. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how someone else did it. That video is obviously a couple of years old now, but we've had a limited opportunity to do new filming over the last year, so hopefully that's fine. So on to the next bit. So I think for you to take from that, try and make sure that when you do step into the exporting arena, if you're not already doing it already, or indeed want to make it a large part of your business, understand your motivation. What's the purpose for which you're doing this? Really have a good defined proposition to make sure you have your competitive edge in a new market that you're going into, and also have a strategy. As Erno says, be reactive. Make sure you can change that. Don't have it set in stone, but do have a good direction, and so that the resources you're going to need, and obviously allocate them more effectively. Okay. So hopefully you've got a good idea of that. If you increase the amount of exporting you're doing, it can give you more sales and profits. It can reduce the risk if you do it right, in the right way. It can be a good motivation for staff. Obviously, it gives them something interesting and new and different to get involved with. You can get new ideas and innovations just by being in a different space. And like I said, it can increase your competitiveness. The kind of rewards, we would hope you would see. Otherwise, why else would you do it? In terms of increased sales and profitability, it give you a stronger competitive position. Larger businesses, not always, but often benefit from economies of scale, spread of risk, and obviously reducing any impact on seasonal fluctuations. So hopefully through all of that, we're giving you some good ideas as to why you would do this, and obviously how it can help your business going forwards. Now, having spoken about all this, my intention over the next 10 or 15 minutes is not to put you off the whole idea of exporting completely, but it is really necessary to talk about the risks of exporting as well. So some of the things that you might come across. So one of the things is obviously increased costs. You are going to have to invest to make export work for your business. If you're trying to export without a budget behind the activity at all, it greatly reduces your risks of success. And you will probably need to cash flow this activity as well. So if you start exporting, the benefits will not necessarily come through, immediately. Sometimes it will, and you can be selling overseas, the same day that you start. In some markets, it might take you a lot longer to work your way through. You've probably seen a lot in the press at the moment about the free trade agreement with Japan that we signed at the start of the year. It's a fantastic market, but it's one that's going to require quite a lot of investment to realise a return. So it's not a short-term activity you're going to have to do. in terms of additional risks that you might have that aren't already used to in the UK, different markets can have different risk attached to them. So market conditions, structures, levels of bureaucracy, levels of corruption, all sorts of different things can be different across different countries. So it pays to do the research, and I'll talk a lot more about that in our next session, about how you make sure you're prepared for that as possible. There may be barriers to trade. There may be tariff barriers if you're going into an overseas market where we don't have a trade agreement. So it's going to cost you more for your product to be sold there. And that can be non-tariff barriers. So that can be things like language, distance, issues with the market, all sorts of different things, cultural differences. And just because we do have a trade agreement with a market, doesn't mean you're always going to be having tariff-free trade. So, some businesses have found with the free trade agreement with the EU, obviously, that it's only zero tariffs if you're selling UK products. If you're just buying something in from overseas and selling on into Europe, tariffs can apply. So it's not always as simple as it might appear. Also, you've got things like maritime and custom risks. There's a greater need for compliance if you're selling overseas. And if in the past you were only selling into the EU, now after Brexit, you may be having to get used to some different ways of working. And that's really going to be the focus of our last session today, going through some of the export controls and systems to make sure you're as well prepared for that as possible. And then also there's the financial risks. So some markets are easier to get paid from than others. It's not always as simple as a bank transfer. There can be delays, and obviously there can be currency risks. So sometimes there are fluctuations in currencies. So the price that you agree at the start of a contract might not be the same in terms of currency value by the end of the contract. So hopefully there are things we can do to help you to make sure you're mitigating some of those risks and doing it as easily and risk-free as possible. So in terms of, so hopefully that didn't put you off, but in terms of who is exporting, fewer than 1 in 10 British companies export goods or services regularly. So the fact that we've got 3/4 of the audience here already who are trading internationally is absolutely fantastic. You already probably know more than you think you do, or know more than other businesses in a similar situation. And I would really encourage you in the breakout rooms, those of you exporting already or doing a fair bit of it, please share your experience with the ones that are a bit earlier on the export journey, so that they can all benefit from that. There's no better experience than just doing it yourself. But that being said, exporting amounts to more than 25% of GDP in the UK. So it can be a very lucrative activity in terms of what you're doing. And exporting companies, tend to be larger and more profitable than non-exporting companies. But when I say larger, that doesn't mean large businesses. Obviously, I work with hundreds of SMEs only in Cornwall, and my colleagues across the southwest and the rest of the UK, work with thousands more. So, in any size business, from startup to large multinational, can see the benefits and opportunities from exporting. So don't think that because you're a small business, you can't take the benefits and do something with this. So moving on, where do they export to? So export can be very concentrated, from the certainly from the UK, and there are some markets which take a really disproportionate large amount of our exports. And some of that is down to culture. Some of it's down to how long we've been exporting to those countries. So it's a more tried and tested route, and sometimes it's just the markets which people feel more comfortable with. So you can see from that, some of the markets that you've mentioned that you're interested in are the ones that are of greatest interest, which is fantastic. So you've got places like the USA. USA is an enormous market, and what you're probably talking about there is not one market, but 50 distinct markets on a state-by-state basis, with each market, so each state having its own levels of demand, expectations, different culture, not quite a different language, but definitely different way of speaking in some places, and also some different rules and regulations as well on a federal basis. So interesting market, but definitely not the easiest. And then lots of European markets there you can see. and then also probably, you know, one of the biggest markets that I'm sure we'll be talking about is China as well. So, you know, not an easy market to deal with, China, but one that's huge and with a lot of opportunities. So, yeah, we'll talk through these, and it's all about finding the right markets for you, which is obviously what we're going to talk about in the market research section a bit later on. Right. Oh, sorry. Slides frozen there. There we go. All right. So some of the things that I want you to start thinking about now, and think about, you know, what you know already, and where there are some blanks, because these are all things we'll be covering over the course of the 4 sessions this month. So the first one, yeah, might seem simple, is overseas demand. You know, where is there demand for our products? And I'll talk to you about how you can find that out, because obviously we know better than the market. You know, we want to make sure that we're going where there is opportunity. The competition, you know, what we're up against when we go into these overseas markets. Pricing, you know, pricing is not as simple as, you know, just taking your UK price and converting it into dollars or yen or yuan or euros. You know, it needs to be considered when going into overseas markets. The marketing approach, which can be really quite different in overseas markets. Again, the story you tell about your products and your business, it may be different when you're taking it to a whole different culture, and maybe a different platform and medium that you need to do that. So yeah, we'll work through that with you. The documentation requirements, not necessarily the fun bit of export, unless you particularly like, you know, ordering papers and documents, and that floats your boat. But yeah, we'll work through that with you as well. Product considerations, you know, sometimes your product may need to be adapted. You know, for an electronic product, it might be different, you know, different electricity supply. For a food and drink product, it might be different flavors for a different taste palette. It might just be your branding and packaging, you know, how you present it to the market. It might be the size of the product you're shipping to meet the local market demand. So we'll talk through that. There might be staff considerations and customer support. So, you know, do you have the resources, you know, the people resources in your business to do this right? You know, how can we help you set that up in the right way? You know, if you're dealing with Australia, do you need to have staff in place that can answer the phone in the middle of the night, you know, to work for partners and distributors or customers, etc.? Can you converse in the language of the people you're trying to sell to? There may be supply chain constraints. You know, can your supply chain keep up with demand for overseas markets? So we'll talk you through that. And financial considerations. You know, like I said, there may be a need to cash flow, you know, these activities as we go through. You know, if you're investing in overseas markets, you know, what might you need to think about before you start to see a return on that. So we'll work through that. There may be cultural considerations. You know, if you're selling overseas, you know, things are different in different cultures. You know, business, you know, working with people in Germany is you know, still quite formal. If you work in the Middle East, you probably have to go a long way developing a relationship before you start talking about business. In the US, you know, it's do it now. It's very upfront. You know, all stereotypes, but sometimes they hold through. Different routes to market. You know, just because you sell to your customers in one way in the UK doesn't mean that you have to stick to that for an overseas market. So we'll talk you through lots of different routes to market and how you might do it. And then obviously just the logistics side of things. So, you know, we're all selling physical products in this group. So how are you going to get your products there and make sure they arrive on time, safely, you get through customs, you know, without any hitches. So we'll work through all of that to make sure you're, you know, you're sorted. Okay, moving on. So I want to talk through a bit of an export health check. So things to think about. So successful exporting requires a really firm commitment to all levels of the business. So make sure that, you know, you're doing this. No, properly is the wrong word. You know, make sure you're taking it seriously in terms of wanting to do it, know why you're doing it, and therefore willing to commit to it to see the project through. A realistic impact of the assessment of the impact is required. So, you know, hopefully as you walk out of these seminars at the end of the month, you've got a really good idea of how this is going to impact your business, hopefully for the better. Obviously, again, why else would you be doing it? And we certainly believe it's a good thing for your businesses to be doing at the right time. And obviously, you're going to need to put a significant investment of time and resource into this as well. So make sure that you know, you've got that available, and we'll hopefully give you a better picture of what you might need to do that. And obviously, is the business strong enough to commit to the venture? We never want to put a business in the situation where putting a lot of your resources, time, money, people, etc., into focusing on overseas markets damages the already successful business you've built here in the UK. So is this the right time for you to do it? And obviously, you know, the best problem that any business can have, you know, do you have the capacity to meet additional demand? So when all these overseas orders start coming through, you know, can we meet that, and obviously, you know, make sure that the business can grow and grow sustainably and successfully to go forwards. In terms of the financial, you know, side of things, you know, I'm one of these weird people that likes finance, so I like the figures and making sure the spreadsheets add up. So, you know, it doesn't have to, but it can, exporting can place financial stresses on a business, particularly at the start where you're having to invest and spend money to get out there. So make sure that, you know, you're comfortable with that, and you've got a bit of a fighting fund to make that work. So obviously you're going to be thinking about the cost of sales of you know, buying in new stock, and obviously the cost of sales of getting products in front of an overseas customer. I'm sure we will be very experienced of that here in the UK market. So it's just about making sure you're as informed as possible when you talk about that for an overseas market. You know, once obviously you've done this once, it becomes easier and cheaper to get repeat business in overseas markets. But you know, I will say, you know, exporting can be an inexact science. So we can do our research, we can get you know, really prepared, but it can involve failure. So hopefully by working through us and by sitting here and investing your time in these workshops, you're basically mitigating the risk of that. So you're making that chance of failure smaller and smaller and smaller with each step and thing that you do to inform yourself better. Continuing on that financial side of things, you know, returns on exports, you know, can be slower than on domestic sales, and definitely not always. You know, we have experiences where, you know, people are at trade shows overseas, and a buyer will just turn up at your stand and say, yeah, with their credit card, and say, yeah, I like that, I have 1,000 of those, please. You know, let's do that, and happy to pay in advance. And often, you know, we can work with you on the contracting side of things to make sure that you know, it's favourable for you to work with an overseas customer. So making sure the terms of that first order are maybe more favourable to help you establish that yeah, that relationship, work well together. You need to make awareness, create awareness of your products in the target market. So that obviously might require some marketing spend. So some investment behind that. And again, we're going to go through, you know, where you need to, you know, put that money for the greatest impact. You're going to need to compete with existing alternatives. I would say, you know, never try and compete on cost with overseas markets, because obviously that is difficult if you're adding costs into the process of getting products out there. So always try and compete on things like, you know, quality, or the offering, or the uniqueness of your product, or the story, or the brand, or something that you can really add value to, rather than just trying to be cheaper. Consumers can be resistant to change. You know, it's about finding where there's the appetite for your product. So don't push on a closed door. You know, just step through the open ones, and yeah, we'll help you look for where those open doors are going to be. And obviously, yeah, appreciate that sometimes, you know, converting people to a new brand, it can take time, but I'm sure you're all very aware of that in the UK market. So it's just a case of extrapolating that out for an overseas market. Okay, so it might require modifications or adjustments to your business. You know, so that can have a financial implication. Hopefully, yeah, having looked at a lot of your products before we started this, that shouldn't be the case for many of you, I don't think. Yeah, delivery of goods can be slow. So sometimes if you're shipping, you know, shipping containers overseas, it can take a while for things to arrive. You know, obviously it doesn't always have to be the case, but we are seeing some issues around that sort of well, not post-COVID. We are still current COVID, aren't we, unfortunately? But with the current pandemic, you know, the shipping industry has been really affected by this. So, you know, shipping containers are in the wrong place. It's more expensive to ship things, and it can sometimes take more time. So it's just being aware of that and prepared for it. Payment terms may be longer than UK, like I say, not always, but it's good to ask the question to make sure you're fully aware of that before you begin. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, just make sure your business is strong enough to withstand the financial pressures. So a lot of that will come from the planning and research that we're going to go through and talk about it in the next couple of weeks, so that you know what the business has to do this successfully and sustainably and profitably, which is after all what we are all about. And obviously not meaning to scare you, because we work with hundreds of businesses that do this already and do it very successfully. So it's entirely within your opportunity to do the same thing. Okay. Also worth thinking about the human resources side of things. So successful exporting, requires an investment of time. So I think it often helps to have someone within your business. It may be you, because you're here, who's really going to just own this export project. So someone who's going to have an overarching role to see it through and really take it from cradle to grave all the way through the process. Obviously, other people can be involved with it over time and take responsibility in different areas, but it's good to have someone who's really holding the reins and driving it forward and keeping the faith as we work through the whole process. Regular visits are often needed to build a market presence. That's true. Getting into a market and building relationships can be really useful. Obviously, over the last year, what we've seen is a massive acceleration of that trend of virtual communication, talking to people remotely. So we've seen a lot of virtual trade shows, working well. They're different to existing, traditional face-to-face trade shows, but it can work very well. So we're interesting to see how that goes in the future. But I don't think that virtual relationship building is going away. I think that this COVID pandemic has definitely accelerated that trend, even when we can get back to face-to-face discussions and doing things there. It's going to take some time, some of your time, potentially some time from other senior people within the businesses, and it's probably going to require new skills and knowledge requirements. But the good news is obviously all of those skills and knowledge requirements are catered for, and there's a lot of support to enable you to do that. So we can work with you throughout that process. And then also, training and recruitment of key staff. There's always going to be things that you don't know and new things to find out. At the end of the day, I think most businesses are all about people. So it's just making sure that you can support your staff to go through this and do it successfully. And the last thing I'll talk about is obviously the distraction. I guess if you're familiar with project management and the sort of phrase opportunity cost, that's what we're talking about here. So exporting can require a significant time commitment over a long period. So what's the impact going to be if you're diverting resources onto looking at overseas markets? So consider how business as usual is going to be managed. You don't want to, as I say, negatively affect the existing business that you've already built. You want to make sure that this is going to add to things, and obviously, make sure you're going to benefit from this in the long run. There may be a short-term cost, but it's all about the long-term benefits. Okay, so what I wanted to do with that sort of health check section was, I say, not put you off, because obviously it's not my job to say don't export. But it is my job to say we should export at the right time for you. Okay, so it's about making sure you're fully prepared and know what you have to do. You shouldn't be put off by it. Exporting is a fantastic opportunity for a lot of businesses, and as I say, thousands of businesses in the Southwest are doing it and doing very well out of it. So we want to make sure through these workshops that you're going to be one of those ones that does it successfully and profitably and sustainably, and it becomes a really core part of your business to help you grow and move forward. So what we're going to do now is get you to undertake a small activity, which I think is scheduled for about 15 minutes. So this will be where we put into different breakout rooms. And what I want you to discuss, because obviously it's the first time you've spoken to each other, is think about, where are you on your expert journey currently? Have I just spent half an hour banging on about stuff and you've rolled your eyes the whole time going, we know all this, I've done this 100 times before, very likely, but just you're here to learn a few more details and just make sure this is the right thing for you to be doing, or maybe open up a new market that you haven't focused on already? Or are you completely new to all of this, and all of this is new, and you're feeling a bit rabbit in the headlights in terms of where this is going to take you in the future? Think about what are your key challenges at the moment. So that might be some key challenges around the structure of your business, sort of how you're going to need to change things to fit an export market. It might be just situational challenges that we're all facing at the moment in terms of Brexit, the pandemic, all of that other stuff that's going on. So you'll know best what the key challenges are for you at the moment with relation to this export activity, and also what resources are you going to commit to the export activities in your business. So is it you? Is it a team of people in your business? Do you have some financial resources you can put towards this? Do you have support from your supply chain, from your personal professional network that can help you with this? What resources are you going to commit to making this happen for your business over the next period? So that's the first section, just an introduction, hopefully a bit of food for thought. So now I'll probably pass over to, I guess, Jules or Holly to talk about how the breakouts work.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for that. I think that's a really great introduction. And, even people who are exporting already and thinking about going to a new market, I think it's always good to just remember those real basics. So what we're going to do, guys, very shortly is we're going to pop you into 2 breakout rooms. You'll have either Holly or Andy facilitating in your room. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat in your room if there's a burning question, and the guys will encourage you to do that. We're going to put you in for 15 minutes, and that's going to be then followed by a 10-minute coffee break. So it's up to you in the room to manage the time, and if you only want a 5-minute break, you can carry on chatting in the room. And then when you come back in, the facilitators are going to feed back some of the discussions in the room. We just want you to know that we're very aware of confidentiality. So if there's anything you don't want to share in the room, that's fine. You can privately chat with us and ask us questions, and we can answer those privately if you don't want to share. But it always does help. Generally, everybody has the same question, so feel free to share if you would like to. So what should happen? Hopefully you've all been in breakout rooms before. If you haven't, you should get an invitation on your screen to join. So just hit that button and you'll zip into cyberspace and into the breakout room where you'll find Andy or Holly, and we'll see you back in the main room at 11:20. Okay, enjoy your breakout rooms and look forward to you having the opportunity to introduce yourself to each other. Great, thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, I've just pressed the button, so you should all have an invite to your room. Are you okay there, Alison?
Yes, I'm from the Department for International Trade. I'm a colleague of Ben and Colin's.
Yeah.
And so I'm here to observe today. I didn't know if you wanted me to go into a breakout room or if it was better for me to stay here until they all come back.
It's up to you. We've opened a separate breakout room there's a kind of a couple of guys, just a couple of guys who are kind of like a couple of our business development managers who aren't going into the kind of
okay,
the clients. I don't know if you want to go and join them or
I can go and join them. Yeah, that'd be great.
Have you got an invite to a room?
I did, but I dismissed it by mistake. So it said breakout room 4. Sorry.
Oh, I think I can move you in there.
Okay.
If there's anybody else in there, though, I don't know. Oh, Simara's in there. I can move you in there, though. I'll see if it will work. Put you into room. Oh, no. Move to...
Or I can wait here, Jules. I can wait here until they all come back. That's fine.
Yeah, that's...
I've got some emails I can catch up on and...
Yeah. I'm surprised it didn't give me the option to...
And when I look at the rooms, I see that room number 4, there's one person alone.
Yeah, Simara. Oh.
I'll wait here. I'll
leave
wait
it.
here,
Yeah,
Jules. Don't
that's what I was
worry.
thinking.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't give me the option to put you in there now.
That's all right. I've got some emails I can catch up on while everyone's busy, and then I'll come back at 11:20.
Okay. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing a screen that's giving the...
Yes, I can.
Cool. Brilliant. Nice one. Thank you.
Thanks, Jules. Thank you.
I need to share full screen now. That's my one mistake. There we go. That's better.
Now you are sharing also the breakout session number 2 instructions. We see in a small
Hi, Angela, if you're there, you should have an invitation to join breakout room 1. So if you'd like to join, that'd be great if you're around.
Welcome back, everybody. I can see we've got one room back. The other one is on its way by the looks. They're probably having a conversation right to the end or grabbing a coffee. Let me just have a look and see how we're doing for having people back. Just going to change my view. Yeah, I think we've still got a few people joining us. There we go. That's the 60 seconds up that throws everybody back into the room. So hopefully you all had chance to have a good chat, introduce yourselves to each other, and talk through some of the things that you're up to and some of the challenges and opportunities you might have ahead. What we're going to do is just have a little bit of feedback from the rooms. So I'm going to go to Andy first. How was your room, Andy?
Very good. Apart from one microphone broken, we did quite well. Loads of discussion. I think definitely keep Ben and Colin busy for the next 3 weeks. I'm sure there's a lot of questions to be answered here. So I think I'll just give you an overview of what the businesses are doing and where they're at. So Michelle accidentally started her business selling calendars, and is doing really well, especially on Etsy with a strong US market. James is wholesaling bamboo socks, but 25% of that business was in Germany. They're made in Portugal and currently having to discount to cover import fees. Tara, wholesale again, USA is quite strong, but the EU market was 10 to 20% of turnover. So that is proving tricky, but won't give up on it. Emily is exporting by the pallet direct to farmers, livestock fence equipment. I think that's the right term. Demand's really good, but we'll come on to the issues because there's quite a lot of key challenges that are the same for people as well. Fran, Etsy, selling greetings cards and prints, and again, to the USA is a big market for them. Helen gave us some great feedback, I'm sure, but a microphone wasn't working, so we'll grab that offer later and feed it in. Key challenges, I'm going to throw these out because we probably need to make a list for these guys to support back on. Transport and logistics, especially for the US, was for a few. Brexit, Germany, the import, they don't want to be importers, the people buying from James. So they need some support around working with them and how they progress it. Third-party warehousing's been discussed, but no one feels they're big enough to do that. Currently discounting to cover import costs, and that is not ideal. As I said, Tara doesn't want to give up the European business, so they want to learn ways to work around that. Emily, tariffs are a minefield, and keeping margins and the new challenges around that. Also, even Ireland and Northern Ireland has become chaotic for selling to, so we'd like some support around there. And Fran's quite keen on exporting to Japan. There's been demand from there and more to the EU, so we'd like to look at some research around that side. Rules of origin. Hopefully Colin and Ben can nod their heads at that point. Would like to understand that more. Some of the products are made internally in the UK, but some parts from abroad, and people are getting very confused. So would like some support around that. So it's quite a lot to go out there for you.
Wow. we were sitting in the other breakout room going, there's no questions, it's all very quiet, but what we'll do, Andy, thanks for that, and thanks for everybody in the room. And I know that some of the stuff that you've asked about, the guys are going to be covering in the sessions, or they will try and build some of that in. If there are immediate questions, we will come back to them in a bit to feedback. But shall we, let's hear from the other room. Let's hear from Holly's room as well, so we can see what's happening there. And we can hopefully, that'll give Ben and Con a little bit of time to absorb a lot of those questions and let us know the best way to answer them. So Holly, how was your room?
Yeah, good. We had a mix of people at different stages of their export journey, some exporting retail, some wholesale, some not started yet, some pushed into it quite dramatically because of Brexit and have now become 100% e-commerce businesses. Sorry, not Brexit, COVID. Key challenges, cost of shipping, reliability of shipping companies, issues with the EU market around Brexit, customs issues in Canada. There's some kind of targeting issues in the US. So rather than thinking of it as one country, targeting by state. And also quite interestingly, we've got Ian, who is selling personalised products, and he said the differences in spelling with the UK and US is causing some sort of spell checker hiccups on the website. And in terms of sort of resources, just investing in marketing and customer research is what a lot of them were tending to be doing at the moment. You're on mute, Ali.
I know. So the minute I spoke, I realised I'd done it. I'm sorry. Okay, that's great. So thank you, guys. There's a lot to take on board there. Ben, Colin, are there any quick and easy answers that you wanted to pick up on that? Or I know we're going to be covering quite a lot of those in the session.
I mean, I just pick on the US one, the spelling bit. It is, they don't speak the same language. And you're right, US, Ben and I would treat the US as not being one country. Every state is different. And I think you need to think about which states or perhaps regions you want to try and enter. And we often talk about having different websites for different countries. And even with the US, we would suggest having a different website than your British one, just to try and get the spelling right, the whole pants, trunk, all that sort of stuff. So I think, I'm sorry, I picked the easy one in some ways, but the spell check bit for people's names, especially if you're personalizing stuff, is really tricky. So I guess the only advice I would give there is to make sure you're very clear when people place the order that they're, it's their responsibility to get the spelling right, rather than you making any assumptions. But I think, the US, treat it as 50 odd different countries, because you just need to. We sometimes ask people, why are you picking on the United States? One of the most difficult, complex markets in the world to enter. Although, everybody talks about United States, are there simpler ones? So, sorry, I picked an easy one, Ben, relatively from the list. So, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, I mean, touching on transport and logistics, I mean, undoubtedly costs are higher at the moment. I think lots of freight forwarding companies and shipping partners have kind of, they've taken the opportunity sometimes to increase their costs based on a sort of a COVID premium over the last year because of extra safety measures or staff or whatever they need to have brought in. And then, as I said, I mentioned things like shipping containers. Because of the massive drop in output from China over a period, you've got stuff where shipping containers are just in the wrong place. The whole global ecosystem of trade is a bit messed up at the moment. It's going to take some time for it to go back. But I know, costs of container transport from here to China have quadrupled in some cases. So it's something which hopefully will work its way through the system, but it's definitely an issue now. I know a few people mentioned about trading with Europe, and obviously the costing and additional tariffs and things like that. We'll give you some resources as we go through this, where there's a tariff checker, where as long as you know kind of your commodity codes and things like that, you can help to find that. So it's about knowing where the resources is, and also I think if you're selling direct to consumers, often I think it's just making sure it's communication. It's making sure consumers are aware that there may be an additional cost or what that additional cost might be when it arrives at their door. I think we're all quite used to buying stuff from overseas, and if you look at it and think, right, it's going to cost this much in total, including some money for shipping, you can make that informed decision. But it's when you think you're going to pay 20 euros for something and then when it arrives as an extra cost and you actually ended up paying 25 euros for it, that's where it starts to have issues. So it's about that communication bit and being as upfront as possible, and obviously in that case having the information to know exactly how much a consumer is going to have to pay in total. So again, hopefully as we go through this, there's a lot of information and resources we can give you to find the answers to that, but a lot of it is probably going to be individual questions. So as I said, Colin and I can pick up on those individual points with you, after the sessions themselves.
Yeah, I mean, several people, it seems like rules of origin have come up unsurprisingly with the trading continuity agreement that we recently signed with our near neighbours. Rules of origin from the news you're seeing has confused the bigger players as well. One of the bits I don't quite understand, but obviously is the case, is how you can import something from Europe, and then if you don't do anything to it but want to re-export it back, it doesn't count as being of European origin, therefore it doesn't get a preferential rate of duty. And that's just the rule, unfortunately. And that is, you'd have seen in the news, Marks and Spencers and other people have been impacted by that. We're going to touch on a little bit on origin later and where to find some information. But I think, as Ben said, some of these things probably are more sort of individual, where we can point you towards resources and talk you through things, just to make sure we're giving you the right information. But I think everybody's each case will be a little bit different, and there'll be different rules associated with each product.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, guys. What I just wanted to let people know is, if you have very specific questions to yourself that are particular to you, please feel free to message Ben, Colin, myself privately, and we'll try and pick those up. I think what will probably happen in between the sessions is that Ben and Colin are going to be quite busy, maybe picking up individual, if they're detailed questions that we're not going to be able to cover in the room. If you've got general questions, guys, please put them in the chat, and I think the general ones we can pick up as we go along. An awful lot of what you've asked, I know the guys are going to be picking up and covering. So I'm going to thank you for that, and I'm going to move us on to the next session, where Ben is going to introduce us to market research.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ellie.
Ben.
I think also when you're talking about putting questions in the chat, I think just be aware that I think when we go to different rooms, the chat disappears, so it clears itself. So we'll make sure we share our email addresses at the end as well, so we can pick things up with people, that they don't get lost in the chat when we go across. Okay, right. So Alison, I've got you on my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see my slides? Yeah, brilliant, fantastic, thank you. All right, so moving on to talk about market research. So this, to me, this is one of the fun things about exporting. Finding stuff out about overseas markets you don't know already. So this is all about giving yourself a more informed decision about the export journey that you're going to go on. So I'm going to talk you through that, kind of things that you might want to find out, what kind of things you might be looking for. And then also some resources to where you can actually go and find answers to these things. So yeah, hopefully we'll give you that. And also at the end, you will be receiving copies of all the slides. So if there are web addresses and things that you might want to note down, you'll get them at the end. So market research. So for me, market research, it's really about that top sentence, finding the pearls. Like I said, the world is a really big place. There are opportunities everywhere, but really it's about prioritizing. It's about finding where's the best opportunity for you and your business, and I'm sure that will be different for every single business that's in this Zoom room at the moment. So everyone will have an individual focus in terms of where it's going to go, and it's this focus, finding the pearls. It applies as much to really established businesses as it does to newcomers. So if you're looking at your first market, that's as important a decision as it is for an established exporter looking at for which new market they want to go into. And if you don't commit to a strategy, you run the risk of spreading resources too thinly. Now, I'm all for world domination being your strategy for the next five years, but you still need to take that a market at a time and figure out where the priorities are and where you're looking to go. So, like I say, don't spread your resources too thinly by chasing too many export opportunities and saying yes to everything, because each individual market, as we found out from those questions, will have a different set of requirements and a different set of challenges that you might have to overcome. So it's important to have an export strategy, based on evidence, you know, and that evidence can be different for everybody, that's going to guide your activity. And I would say a small business should really restrict itself to a small number of potential markets, or one. You know, one market, you know, is often plenty to keep a business busy and to give you the opportunities in return that you need. So it's all about focus, you know, not a scattergun approach, but you know, a real targeted approach in terms of what you're looking at. So in terms of selecting markets, the kind of things that you might want to think about are the obvious ones. So like, what's the biggest existing market for products like ours? But, you know, beware of that, because, you know, lots of people, you know, think, well, you know, China is an enormous market. There's billions of people in China. So if I just get 1% of that market, you know, we're set. That's transformational for our business. But obviously, you know, chipping away 1% of the Chinese market will take a huge amount of investment and effort and resources. So it might be better being a much bigger fish in a smaller pond. So, you know, rather than, you know, going where China is, where there's a lot of competition, you know, maybe you might become a really big player in Slovakia, where no one else is looking. So find the right market for you, not just the biggest. Obviously, it's nice to look at faster growing markets. So, you know, where, you know, demand for your product is going to grow year on year, you know, rather than shrink. And also most least competition for products like ours. So, you know, those top three are probably really key ones for you to have a look at. In your mind, you know, have some indicative factors that you can use to identify key opportunities. So we do a lot of market research for clients, and I'll talk some more at the end about, you know, potentially one of the you know, stepping off points for you after these workshops is to join a program we have running called the Cornwall Trade Forum, where part of that offer is a market research service. So we can do a really detailed market research report for you on one overseas market. But in terms of choosing that market where research is focused, you've got to identify the right matrices, if you like. So it's not just about the scale of the opportunity. You might also be thinking about the, you know, the ease of entry into that market. So, you know, what are the barriers? You know, maybe it's better to go for a smaller market that's more open than a bigger market where there are challenges. So it's finding those right opportunities and knowing what a good market for you looks like. So again, it will be different for everyone. You know, you can inform yourself from opportunities that you already know about. So, you know, if you've already had, you know, 4 opportunities this year from Hong Kong, fantastic. That's probably a good indication that Hong Kong is going to be a good market for you to have a look at more proactively as well. So interrogate, you know, previous sales, your personal knowledge. You know, do you have a personal knowledge of a particular overseas market? You know, it might even just be because it's your favorite place to go on holiday for the last 20 years. So you know the culture and the market and the layout and geography really well. You know, that might be useful market information for you. And are there any markets you should exclude for now? You know, so maybe that's just because of existing challenges, you know, structural, situational things, or just because you think there's a challenge there, so it would be a good market for us, but just not right now. So it's about prioritizing and looking at where you go from here. So 6 key questions I think we need to look at. So, you know, what's effective market research? So essentially, what answers do you need? What questions do you need answered? When do you need to do it? And I would say, you know, generally as early as possible in your exporting journey. Where can you find the information, which we're going to give you some pointers on? Which markets to prioritize? As I said, you know, why is it important for profitability? You know, why is having this information important for you? And how are you going to approach your research? So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all process. We need to think about it as being right for your business. So we're going to give you hopefully some useful links to websites where you can find some of this stuff out for yourself, because obviously there's a huge amount of information sitting out there. It's just knowing where to look for it. The market selection, so, you know, looking at where there are barriers, you know, eliminate the unattractive options, you know, put your resources where it's going to have the biggest impact. You know, how to, you know, look at this research to find the right answers, and obviously, you know, look at the cultural side of things to you know, to make sure that when you do step out and actually start talking to these markets, and by markets I mean people, you know, you're well set up to do that. So hopefully by doing this research, you're going to prioritize the countries, you know, within those countries, the market segments, whether that's geographic or by, you know, vertical, and also approach suitable customers. So you know you're going to do it right first time, because, you know, often in international markets, you don't get the second chance that you might want. So if you're really stuff up your first meeting, it's going to be harder on the second one. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. So after this one, hopefully in the next 20 minutes or so, you'll be able to identify the factors that make a market suitable for you, and also know where to find that information to make your decision. So that's what we're aiming for. Okay. So what does market research mean to you? So the kind of questions that you want you to ask, you want a clear aim as to what the research wants to do for you. So when you're thinking about market research brief, don't just think about overarching information. So it's not about knowing everything about the US market. It might be just very simply knowing who are the 4 or 5 key distributors or agents in this area of the market on the East Coast of the US that operate in the space that I operate in and have the customers ready for me. It might be about finding the right e-marketplace for you to work on, because we'll talk about this in, I think, next week. Things like Amazon are huge e-marketplaces, but they're certainly not the biggest e-marketplace in every overseas market in the world. So it might be about finding the right one for you. So be specific about what you want the research to do. Focus on that need to know information, not the nice to know information, because it's easy to get bogged down in lots of demographics and overarching information that just isn't going to do you a lot of benefits in the long run. And also think about both your short-term and long-term objectives. So how does this fit into your business plan, and what are you trying to achieve with it? So all things to consider before you lay out your approach. So talking about actually researching the market now. So obviously the best way that you can get information is with primary data. So actually going out and getting up-to-date information on the overseas markets that you're looking to go into. So the advantages that these have is that obviously it's accurate, reliable, and up to date. You're generating this information and this data fresh, so therefore it's going to be correct at the time at which you look at it, if that makes sense. So it's specific to you, and therefore it's right. Obviously, the disadvantages of this is that that's expensive. You're having to do it yourself, and it's not there readily available. You're actually having to go out and get it yourself. So this could be you doing research yourself. It could be as simple as customer testing by going out to an overseas market, doing some actual testing with potential consumers and getting your feedback. But as I say, that you can imagine that is expensive. It could be you getting feet on the ground in the market. It could be commissioning an agency to do market research on your behalf. It's all going to provide you with an excellent level of data and information, but obviously there's a cost attached to that. So you're going to have to wait for that information to be collated, and it's going to cost you money to do so. And then we have desk research, and obviously we're all spending a lot more time at our desks at the moment. So it's what we call secondary data. So the advantage of this, obviously, it's a lot less expensive because it's sat there ready, waiting for you to have a look at. It's readily available and accessible. You can start looking at that this afternoon. Once you've finished talking to us. The disadvantages of this are obviously, it's only accurate at the time it's brought together. So you need to be aware of looking at market reports in 2014, because it was right at the time. It might not be right now. We've talked about the EU. It's a different situation exporting to the EU now than it was in December last year. So it can be unreliable. You really need to be looking at a very credible source. So making sure you're looking in the right place for that kind of information. And obviously, it can be generic, so it might not be directly applicable to you and your business. It might just be collated information for the whole market. You can look at quantitative information. So again, this is more sort of general overview stuff. It can help with prioritizing. So again, you're looking at sort of measurable statistics, demographics, costs, weights. By that I mean, someone mentioned the Japanese market. The expectations on what shaped product fits on a shelf in Japan will be different to the UK. They want to buy in different quantities, etc. It's good to have that information up front. Trade associations are very good for this kind of information. I think we've got obviously a couple of distilleries on the group today. and there's good support from the UK associations that can help with that. Similar with Fashion and Textiles, UK Fashion and Textiles Association, very good at this kind of thing about providing overarching data. So good to have a look at those. And then qualitative, so really in depth. This again is probably more what you would get about talking direct to people. So things about descriptions, how things need to be described, the story that you need to be telling when you're talking to a potential customer or partner in a particular market. Different consumer behaviours, about how they act in different markets. Different appearance. It could be as simple as colours. Colours have different connotations in different cultures. So think about how that might make your product look to a different pair of eyes, because we're not all the same. We do look at things in a different way based on our cultural background and preferences. Different expectations on quality. And feeling. Something as difficult to quantify as feeling in terms of what a product makes people feel. So the quality one, I think someone mentioned Japan. I had a food client I work with who exports to Japan, and they had a situation where they I think they were probably about their 10th, 15th order to the same customer distributor in Japan, and one product in a consignment of about 100. When a customer opened it, had a small amount of basically mold where the seal had failed on the product. So that's one product out of thousands that they had shipped. But that almost scuppered the entire relationship with that Japanese buyer. So just knowing that in Japan, quality is almost an absolute. If you make a mistake on one product, that can rule out that entire market for you. That's useful upfront information to know. So all of that information in different proportions will be useful to you, and it's about deciding what you need to know to make a successful foray into an overseas market. So that's what we're talking about now. So external factors are obviously very important to consider, because markets I say are different to the UK. You're getting to know a different market, and these do change over time. I'm sure you've probably come across the sort of I always use pestle, but in this example it's pestec. In terms of different things to consider when you're looking at market conditions. And what we're looking at there is the kind of the political climate. That includes all of the bureaucracy that you might attach to exporting, which can change over time. You've got things like tariffs and quotas. The situation with the EU at the moment. We are finding that some markets are being almost, dare I say, deliberately difficult sometimes when working with overseas. With UK exporters. So it's about knowing where the easier and I say more open doors are to press on, rather than fighting against where there might be restrictions. Economic, looking at areas of economic growth, looking at currencies and exchange rates. Where are exchange rates slightly more favourable to you? Obviously, the exchange rate, with the EU, for instance, has changed a fair bit over the last 6 months. As has it with the US and elsewhere. So, knowing where that is maybe perhaps more stable or indeed more advantageous to you. The social side of things, where are your type of customers, really knowing your consumer and who's buying from you. Where do they exist in greater numbers, and where are the demographics in your favour. Hopefully you will know your customer very well and will have a picture of them, or even a personality or profile of them drawn up. So it's about knowing where those people are around the world and where that's changing. The technological side of things. So that's new products, innovation. If you're selling online, you've got a digital product. Where that is more prevalent around the world. And then obviously, a big one for us around the culture and environmental, side of things. So that's, around language, environmental legislation and controls. If you're selling into Germany, there are lots of requirements around the packaging that you use and the ability to have it recycled or reused, or if you're shipping stuff in bottles, there's bottle buyback schemes and things like that. So knowing where those exist around the world. And obviously, down the bottom, hopefully not an issue for any of us, but bribery as well. There are more and less stable and I guess ethical places where you can do business. So considerations, some of this might be too high level for you to want to engage with. Some of it might be really relevant. It really does depend on the type of product you're selling and how any of this is going to affect you. So moving on, I'm trying to go quite a pace with this, obviously, because there's a fair bit to get through, and I think this will be useful for questions when we get to the end as well. We can tailor it more to individuals. So what can you find? What kind of information is out there already? So there's lots of information used at the first stage to really start filtering the markets that you want to have a look at. And this is, a good bit about sort of maybe discounting the markets you don't want to have a look at, and obviously taking a look at the ones that already start to look a bit more appealing. And I've got some resources from DIT that I'll share with you, which I think will give you a really good targeted look at all of this. So try and find country profiles and really figure out how things work in those markets. And I've got some links to those later on. Look at industry data that's out there already. So so trade press is a great one for this. If there's an industry newsletter or body or something for your particular kind of product, look at what's happening in different markets. Look at press releases. Look at what your competition's doing in terms of going into other overseas markets, because that gives a good indication for you. Speak to your suppliers. Talk to your supply chain and other people around you in your business network to see if they've spotted any trends or different outlooks for different markets that could work, that you could piggyback on the back of. Look at things like spending habits, demographics. Again, look at sort of macro data that can be accessed simply by looking at Google. If you can invest in things like trade shows, trade shows are a great way of gathering data on overseas markets. Just walking the floor, seeing where demand is, seeing where people are coming from, etc., is a really good thing. And obviously that's been democratized a fair bit in the last year, given the fact that so many trade shows are now gone virtual, and I don't think that virtual element will go away. Just a bit of anecdotal feedback. We'll talk more about trade shows in a different session, but we found virtual trade shows are very good at keeping up current relationships, probably more difficult to make new ones, and that's just the nature of talking to people on Zoom and what we're doing. But the attendance lists for these things are still available. The topics of the activity going on around the shoulder of these events in terms of networking events, training events, seminars, etc., they're still available. So use those to pull out data and know what's going on. And like I said, trade press is there. Okay. So some places where you can have a look, and a lot of these are free. So obviously you've got the big ones like Euromonitor and things like that, where you're going to have to pay for membership. But a lot of these will give you free access to reports. So marketresearch.com, lots of pre-written market research reports. So it's free. You can take a look at it. Obviously, like I said, it won't necessarily be tailored exactly what you're looking for because it's secondhand data. But if someone's been looking for the same sort of thing that you might be thinking about, great, it's there to have a look at. So trawl through that and see what's available. The World Bank gives you more high level data. I think we've got an agricultural focused business on this group, so selling fencing, etc. So look at areas of agricultural development. Where are they moving on to a more established or industrial agriculture model? That could be a good overseas market for you to have a look at. OECD provides again sort of economic, social statistics, all very top level. But if you know what type of customers you're trying to sell to, look at where there are either a lot of them or it's a growing part of the market. Compass is more B2B focused, but it does actually give you a database of people you can have a look at. Events Eye is a trade show directory. So if you're look at where the trade shows are happening for your particular sector or industry. Say I think someone mentioned bamboo socks. So look at maybe essentially ethical or sustainable fashion. Where are the trade shows for that happening? We know there are ones going on in Europe. You've got Italy and Germany happening already, but also look at where those are happening in the further east in the US. If there's a trade show for it, it's probably likely that that's a significant market for those type of products. in that place. So there's a reason why they put it there in the first place. So have a look at that. A few others, if you're looking at digital, you've got one there on internet and mobile usage. So obviously, if you're selling digitally, it's useful to know that people can actually access that type of thing. Wikipedia, it's generic information. I would be cautious about that, but it's there. Online newspapers, you can look at what's being published overseas, and obviously things like Google Translate can help you to draw the data out of that. And also British Library, which might not be everyone's first port of call, but not a lot of people know British Library offers a free research service for people, so anyone can use that to try and find some data that they're looking at. So it might be a good place to have a look, just to get a free bit. But what we're really looking at with that is, and the other one I mentioned is analysing the competition. Okay, so also look at where your competition is going. So if you know who your competitors are in the UK, and you can see that they're already selling overseas in certain markets, then that might be a good, they might have done that work already for you. So look to where it's going to work for them, and that means it might work for you. Don't assume they're always right, because lots of businesses can make mistakes, and very large businesses can make mistakes by trying to launch in a market that isn't suitable for them. They think they know better than that market. So see how it's working out for them. But that could be a good way of doing it. And also, look at the domestic competition that you're going to face in an overseas market. So find out, who they are, how much the market that they're taking up already, how they're pricing their products or services. It's easy to make a mistake around, the level at which your product sells at, in terms of, premium, standard, everyday, whatever it might be. In the UK is the same as overseas. It's not necessarily the case. One of our clients that my colleague looks after is Rodders Dairy. That's a premium product in a UK supermarket, but it's a premium product that's very affordable. It's within reach of most people. You take that same product out to a market in Hong Kong or Dubai or somewhere like that, and suddenly it's gone up a significant number of levels in terms of that premium quality and feel, and therefore the price of that needs to match the customer's assumptions. If you're trying to sell a premium product at an everyday price, people won't associate necessarily that same quality and aspiration against that product. So you need to get that right. Look at how they market their products and services. We're going to be talking about overseas marketing in one of the later sessions, which again is very interesting. Don't assume the language you use is the same, not just in terms of spelling, but in terms of the story and how you explain it to people. Story is very important. And also the platforms that you use. Social media is not the same in overseas markets. E-commerce is not the same in overseas markets. Written media is not the same. So there may be different practices that you'll need to take on in your your channels for communication, and look at why consumers buy their products or services over other. So lots of research to do, but that's a good starting point in terms of what you're trying to do and what you're looking at. So what we're really talking about is not whether you should or shouldn't go to a market. That may be a part of it, but really what is your priority? What are you looking at in terms of the first market you need to have a look at? I'll skip past that. So one of the things that might be worth looking at is the ease of doing business that I mentioned. And one thing that a very easy way of doing that, there's doingbusiness.org. It's a very easy one to have a look at, and it shows you just where things are potentially more stable or more easy for you to go out and do business. So obviously UK, you can see, is on that list because we have a relatively stable economy. We have good legal backing to everything that we do. So therefore it's a good market for other countries to do business in. You'll notice we talked about China being a huge market. It's not on that list. It's not in the top ease countries to do ease top country to do business in easily. So that's gives you some indication of maybe there's other challenges outside of the scale of the market that you need to consider. So one thing we're going to look at now is resources that are available from us for the DIT, and I'm going to rattle through these because I appreciate I'm going over time a little bit. So on our website, which is great.gov.uk, we've got a vast amount of resources on there you can have a look at. We've done a lot of that, distilling of data for you. So the stuff there are just on general, creating an export plan, defining route to market, finance, etc. But you'll see one area there is finding an export market. And if you have a look on there, you can see, we already have country guides to, pretty much every overseas market that's out there. And that will give you a breakdown on, the stability of that market. What are the biggest industries? What are the things that are most in demand? What's the structure, the customs, requirements, all of that kind of thing is there. And we can also help you find the right platforms for that. So find the right online marketplaces for that market. What events are happening over there? We've got an export opportunities area there, where basically at any one time there's always a couple of thousand opportunities there for UK businesses to sell their products overseas. So you might find one saying, there's a distributor in Slovenia looking for a high quality spirits brand to add to their portfolio. So if you provide high quality spirits, you might think that's great, I can do that, and go on to it and answer that opportunity. You can also set up alerts. So if you suddenly find that, actually over the last 6 months, there's been 15 alerts coming up in Slovakia, maybe that's a good market for you to have a look at. So that's a good one for you to log into and have a look at when you've got a bit of time. Field research, as I say, has become easier over the last year for sure, with the prevalence of Zoom and online events and things like that. So market visits can be done from your desk now to make develop existing contacts and make new contacts. So have a look at that and think about how you can use that to make things slightly easier for you. If you're going to appoint a market research agency, obviously that can be quite expensive, but obviously you get what you pay for. So you can really push them to make sure they're delivering the right results that you need. But be very specific on your brief. So be very specific about what answers you're asking them to provide. Generic brief provides generic answers. So make sure you're specific in what you're doing. DIT does offer that service, and I'm not selling it at all, because there are sometimes cheaper or more readily available options out there. But DIT can do something like that for you through our OMIS service, Overseas Market Introduction Service, where it provides everything from overarching market information through to warmed up contact lists for you to approach and meetings set up with people in countries. So that is an option when you get to it. Okay, so I think I've unfortunately used up the overspill that we had, so I apologise about that. But market research is very, very important, so you should definitely do it before you jump into an overseas market. So the breakout now, so we're going to have 10 minutes, okay, of me not talking, which would be lovely for you all. So we're going to discuss your initial ideas on target markets that you want to look at. So you might have a really good clear idea of this already. You might just be at initial stage of not knowing at all. What else do you need to know? What do you need to know to ensure that this is a good market for you? So start to build up your list of your need to knows. What makes a good market for you? So what does that look like? And where will you be able to find that information? And if you don't know, where are you going to go to find the answers to that? Okay, so apologies for going on a few minutes, too much. I'll stop talking now, and you can go into your groups.
Brilliant, Ben. Thank you. Jules is going to press the button, and you should have your invitation up shortly.
Yeah, all open. Angela and Rebecca, if you can hear me, you've been invited to breakout room 1 again. So if you've got the invite there, if you'd like to join the room, that'd be great. Cheers.
Welcome back, folks. We've just got a few and a sort of another few seconds until the rest of the other group join us. Just on the countdown. They will start to appear very soon. There we go. Perfect. Welcome back, everybody. Was that a very quick 10 minutes? I swear time goes quicker in breakout rooms. We're just going to try and catch up. Still got quite a lot to cover this morning. So quick roundup from the rooms. Andy, how was it?
Loads of participation from our team. Even more so, I think, when we found out we had someone making gin in the room. It seemed to go down quite well. Fran's got some good feedback from what Ben said, and not taking a hunch on where would be good to export to, looking at data. So I think there's some good learning already from that. I'm going to do some more research. Helen was doing some great progress with some trade shows in the US back when I guess we could travel there. And a good agent over there that wants to progress that and up it, and stopped all activity in Europe. James wants to delve into more on certification required, labelling for the socks, the bamboo socks. And there was a few, obviously Helen's doing similar restrictions, so there was some internal knowledge within the group as well, but that would be something to feed back. And Rabina looking to launch a new product. They've been exporting to Canada with an agent, quite tricky, but quite good. Hong Kong's been okay with a good agent, but going bust. So they're not trading with Brexit, so they might have some issues there. But they've learned from the past in a way. They've got inquiries, got very excited, and then found that it wasn't worth the squeeze in a way. So definitely an advocate of doing your research first and understanding the marketplace and the research issues.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. Holly, how about your room?
Yeah, good. Some good ideas. People focusing on markets that have got a strong affinity to Cornwall, so sort of Celtic countries, where they sort of like the story of where it's come from. Lots of people basing their decision on customer profiling and research into the customer. And then also focusing on countries which have got easy access, so UK English-speaking countries, and avoiding the EU.
Okay, so thanks for that, guys. We're not going to stop for questions now, because we want to crack on with the next session, where we're going to hand over to Colin, and he's going to take us through export procedures. So it's quite a meaty session. If you have got questions, guys, please keep them coming in the chat. We will have some time for questions at the end. So Colin, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ali. Hi, everybody. I'm Colin Piper. So I'm an international trade advisor covering Cornwall, same as Ben. Ben's going to be my clicker, I think, today. So Ben, let's move on. So I think, as Ali said, there's a lot of detail in doing customs declarations and all the sort of paperwork that goes through it. Ben and I have assumed that most of you are probably using a courier, freight forwarder, the post office, rather than actually sitting at a computer doing your own declarations. So we've sort of skewed it in that way. Also conscious that there is some repetition in here, but it is quite important that some of you do understand some of the sort of responsibilities that you have as an exporter. So we're going to cover some of those things that are on the screen at the moment. So if we move on again, please, Ben. So first of all, what is an export? Well, the obvious one is a physical good moving overseas, but it also covers temporary shipments. So you might well potentially send something overseas for repair, and it's going to come back, but HMRC still counts that as an export. Services also are an export. So it can either be somebody who is selling their services, maybe as a marketing agent, or an architect who is selling, their skills to somebody based overseas, or It could be a UK business that is attracting people to come and visit. So an obvious one there would be a museum or a campsite, a hotel, those things. All those things that we, as the IT, think of as being an export. For customs purposes, an export is a good leaving the borders of the UK. Sometimes sounds complicated, but it really isn't. But there are three things, I think. It's compliance, declarations, and paperwork. And as you're probably aware from running business, since HMRC is quite keen on compliance, declarations, and paperwork. Next slide, please, Ben. So your responsibilities. These obviously primarily relate to goods. Now, if people have in the past would have said, well, I just sell X works, Ben and I will probably recoil at people saying they just sell X works, and I'll give you the reason why. The third bullet point down, obtain proof of export. It is imperative, as far as HMRC are concerned, that you are able to show that the goods have left the borders of the UK. Otherwise, you are liable for the VAT. So if you sell solely on an X works basis, you have no control over the exporting process, because all you're saying with X works is that Bob can turn up with his van, wander around your premises, pick up any box he likes, puts it on his van and drives away. You give him an invoice, he pays. How do you then prove to HMRC that the goods have actually left the country? If you can't prove to HMRC, they will ask you for the VAT, because as far as they're concerned, they've remained in the United Kingdom and therefore that is due. So I think it's really important that you understand that you have some responsibilities to be able to prove that the goods have left the UK. And there is a set of terms called Incoterms that describe how a goods, this sort of procedure works and where different responsibilities lie. The two that are probably most used are something called FCA, free carrier alongside, and either DAP or DPD, DDP, duty paid. All of those give you the ability to prove to HMRC that you have proof of export. FCA is probably the simplest one because it just means that you take responsibility for actually doing the export. So you retain the control of the whole process and you then get the documentation you need to show that you have exported. So with FCA, Bob would turn up, you would load the goods onto the vehicle, you or your agent, post office, freight forwarder, UPS, DHL, FedEx, declare to customs, you get the proof of export. You also need to be able to say what the tariff classification is, also known as the commodity code. It is your responsibility to get this right. So this is the code that tells the customs authorities in different countries what the goods are and therefore what tariffs should be applicable to those goods and perhaps what other controls are around those goods. You also tell them why you're exporting, what they call a CPC. You have to be aware of export control. Listening to the people who are on the call at the moment, I cannot believe they have anything that could be used for military purposes. So I think you're all safe. The only thing to bear in mind with export control is it also includes people who are sanctioned. So if you suddenly get a high net worth individual who's buying lots of stuff from you, you might just want to check a sanctions list to make sure you're allowed to sell them. You also need to keep the records 6 years plus the current year, same as you do for your normal tax stuff, to be able to show to HMRC that the goods have left the country. Okay, Ben, let's move on. So the key facts, all goods are presented to UK customs, all exports are 0 rated. And this again comes back to the evidence bit. You have to be able to show that the goods have left the country. Some goods are controlled. So it's possible that some software is controlled. I have a client in North Cornwall that has software that can be used by submarines, can be used for other purposes, but can be used by submarines, and therefore potentially that they have to go through an export control. All shipments have value. It's very tempting on a commercial invoice to think, well, I can mark it down by 50% because I don't want the duty to be too big. That doesn't usually do you too many favors if somebody finds out that that's what you're doing. So you know, the commercial invoice value should be the value of the goods plus shipping plus insurance from memory. So it is important to get that right. And sometimes the exporter has to provide documents that are needed by your customer. So you have to remember that your importer, the customer on the other side of the customs boundary, might well want to be able to prove the origin of the goods. And they might well ask you for certificates of origin or statements about where the goods came from. Next one, please, Ben. So at the import overseas, the customs entry procedure starts. You as the exporter must ensure, if you're selling on FCA or any other Incoterm, that the documents are required to import the goods are with the shipment. All the goods leaving the UK will be subject to import duties and other taxes in the country of destination. So, you know, every time they cross the customs border, the customs authorities will look at the goods and work out whether there are taxes, duties, excise duties, etc., to be paid. But international trade agreements can impact on the duties that are paid. So the most recent one obviously is the agreement with the European Union, and we'll have heard a lot about it being a zero trade agreement and the need for rules of origin. So with certain international trade agreements, we have agreed with the overseas countries that goods can travel between the two, provided they meet origin requirements without any duties being attached to them. Duty, I should stress, is different from VAT. VAT is import VAT will be paid regardless of whether it's a zero tariff arrangement. So it's important to sort of separate those two things out. And I think some of the stuff that's been noticed in the press about people, especially where people are sending business to consumer, is getting used to this idea that the client has to pay the VAT that's due in their country, not the VAT that we charge in the UK. So when you send something from the UK, you do not charge VAT. VAT is applied on import. And I suspect that those of us who buy goods from outside the UK, maybe cheap electronics from Hong Kong and those sort of things, if you carry on doing that, you might well now start seeing that more goods or more of us will be expected to pay import VAT because they've closed some of the loopholes around the declaration on that as well. Next one, please, Ben. So where can you find out the information about what duties and tariffs are payable? So the UK trade tariff is available on .gov.uk with the website that's in white just at the top there. As a UK business, the only time you're going to pay duties is on goods that you import into the UK. So just to make that point, so if you are buying goods in from overseas, then you can use this tool to look it up and see what rate of duty is payable on the goods you're looking to buy in. Now, it might be you buy goods from China or elsewhere in the world which attract a certain duty rate. It might be worth looking at other countries because there might be, and I stress might, a significant saving in the duty that's payable on import if you use a different country or a country with which we have an agreement already. But this is a site you can go to, you just work through it, you put in the commodity code if you hopefully know it already, and then it works down through and it will tell you what the import duties are. It confirms the codes. It also, when you go down through the listing and the notes, it also mentions perhaps some of the sanctions regimes, places you can't sell it, whether it's got special controls associated with it as well. Next, please, Ben. So an export, we're just running through this again a little bit. So goods supplied to another country, you make a declaration to HMRC via Chief. Chief is their software program that controls all of these things. You need to be the exporter of record. You need to have the proof of export to demonstrate to HMRC that you sent them overseas. And in addition, you have additional documentation that could be required by your customer. That will depend on a variety of different factors. Next, please, Ben. One of the most important, well, a critical piece of information you must have in order to be able to export is the economic operator registration identification. So or EORI, which you'll have seen in the press, those of you who are VAT registered, it is it's simply your VAT number with a few extra numbers on the end. It also applies to non-VAT registered traders. Everybody who wishes to put goods across the UK customs border must have an EORI number. Okay, it's really simple to apply. If you haven't got one, takes it takes just minutes, I think, to come back. It does take a few days to update on HMRC's system, but you must have an EORI. If you are, say, selling into Europe, then the person who is responsible for the import in Europe also has an EORI. So you'll have mentioned, or you might have seen, an EU EORI number. The person importing into the European Union needs an EU EORI. The person exporting from the UK needs a UK EORI number. There is a slight kink in that Northern Ireland has its own EORI number for people who are exporting or sending goods into Northern Ireland. And the EORI is part of the details that you just declare on the customs declaration, or the courier people, the freight forwarder, will declare on your behalf. Next, please, Ben. So the 7 bits of information that you need to provide, just running through it again. Who is the exporter? Who's actually doing the work for you? You know, the agent on your behalf, and who's the customer. Very clear about what you're sending, and that includes the correct commodity code. You know, you are legally responsible to make sure the commodity code is right. It is not the responsibility of the freight forwarder. It's not the responsibility of DHL. It's your responsibility to tell them about the right commodity code. Why are they being exported, which is more the customs procedure code. So most things are being exported because they're being sold. But it might be you're exporting goods because you're getting them repaired. It might be you're exporting goods because you're taking them to a trade show to be shown temporarily at the trade show. How much? The value discussed before. Be honest about the commercial invoice, the actual value of the goods. Is it legal? Do you need to get an export license? You usually put the packing. So how's it packed? What's the weight? How many boxes? And how's it moving? Air, sea, or road? Again, if you're using a freight forwarder, they will help you with most of this. Next, please, Ben. So basically, there's 4 categories of documentation. So there's the regulatory stuff that's required by HMRC. There are documents that are required by other UK bodies. So, you know, if I was sending in a previous life chemicals, you know, it might be classed as dangerous goods. So you'd have to sort of have information about what the goods are, what to do if they get spilt, all that kind of stuff. You can have destination country requirements. This is where we come back to the certificates of origin. You might also need health certificates. You know, now we've left the EU, stuff like one of my clients sells frozen pasties. You know, they have to get export health certificates to be able to sell a pasty or send a pasty into the EU. And there might be contractual requirements. So on a bigger contract, it might be letter of credit, that kind of thing, which has to have the right documentation going with it as well. So you can sort of break the documentation down into 4 different areas. Next, please, Ben. So who needs what? You need to understand, you know, which documents are going to go to which people. You need to retain those documents for 6 years. Sometimes the requirements of a destination country can be difficult to find out. And we've listed some sources of information below. Krona is a well-respected database. Your freight forwarder should be able to help. Chamber of Commerce. Your customer ought to be able to help. There is also another UK Gov website about exporting goods. You go into that website, you put the country of destination, you put a commodity code in, and it gives you a list of the documentation that's required to send those goods. In some ways, you know, because sometimes, and I think Ben mentioned this earlier, understanding exactly the requirements, the regulations within a country can be tricky. If we go back to the Incoterm, then the FCA Incoterm is a quite nice Incoterm to use, because your sole responsibility is to provide the documentation for export. If somebody needs to get paperwork from inside your destination country to be able to import them into that country, that would be the responsibility of your customer. bit more difficult if you're obviously doing business to consumer, but if you're doing business to business, that can work. Ben, please. So yeah, what affects the documents? What your customer wants, although that doesn't go so far as to change the value to suit them to avoid tariffs. What UK government wants, what the overseas wants, nature of the goods will affect what documentations, trade agreements will affect the documents that are required, how you're shipping sometimes will affect the documents, why you're exporting, is it for a temporary export, is it for repair, how people are being paid, and then Incoterms 2020, which is the most recent one, again will affect the documents that will state in there. When you say you are using FCA Incoterm 2020, you need to agree and obey by what those Incoterms say as to what documents and what you're going to supply. Ben, please. And then we've got some extra ones here. I don't think there's anything. Certificate of conformity, perhaps just to mention. So this is what we would have known historically as being a CE mark. We have CE marks going to continue to be used for the rest of 2021, but then you need to sort of check whether the CE mark you have is still valid going forward. And certificate of origin, even if you're not claiming preferential duty rates, if you're not doing zero tariff, sometimes your clients will still want to know where the goods have come from and request a certificate of origin for you. Okay, thanks, Ben. So if we move on again. Okay, so HMRC and HMT, which is the Treasury, have responsibility for customs matters. HMRC is not at the border. HMRC just does everything from a big computer in Salford. Border Force does the checks on behalf of HMRC. When you input good things into Chief, goes to Salford, and then the computer says yes, effectively, and gives people the go-ahead that the goods can be exported. Thanks, Ben. So before the goods can leave, HMRC must say yes. The computer must say yes. Computers rule our lives. So that's why you have to submit the export customs declaration to HMRC before the goods are picked up, so that there is a chance for the system to work its way through. HMRC then also collects export statistics, so they can see which countries the goods are going to. Thanks, Ben. Now, we said at the beginning that we anticipated that most of you would be using third parties or couriers to do the declarations for you, but actually anybody can make the declaration, so you can do it yourself. But I will highlight the third quote about a good working knowledge of all 3 volumes of the customs tariff. I don't have that. There aren't many people that do, so I think that's why a lot of people use third parties to do the declarations for them until such stage as their businesses are big enough that they think it's worthwhile to bring it in-house. Thanks, Ben. Right, important. That's right. Really important that you tell your customer it's on the way. I mean, we all buy stuff from people, don't we? And we get really good emails saying, thanks for your order. Here's your invoice, and then you get a second email a couple of days later saying, the goods are dispatched, Amazon do it very well, etc., etc. But it's really important that you do it as well. So let somebody know that it's on its way. If they've got responsibilities, they need to know it's happening. They need to know it's on the way. Send them the documents they require. Make sure you know who you're going to send the documents to. So it's all part of good customer service, to make sure you'll give them plenty of notice that it's on its way, and you're actually sending them the documents. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, poor paperwork does the things that you think it might do. Lorry turns up at the border, can't go. I think we've all had experiences over the past few months of where things haven't gone through customs. I was helping somebody at the beginning of the year. They were trying to get something into the United States inside a container. Somebody's paperwork wasn't in order, so the whole container gets stopped. So, you think how big a container is. This might have been only one box in the corner of it. The paperwork wasn't right. So everything in that container got held for approximately 6 weeks until they sorted it out. So it's really important the paperwork's right. so you don't delay things. You know, if it doesn't go well, bad impression. You know, Ben mentioned earlier about the mold and stuff. You know, potential cancellation. You might have late delivery penalties, disputes, etc. So, you know, it's really important the paperwork is as accurate as you can make it. Thanks, Ben. And there's the link of the export goods again. And I think that it wasn't even canter, that was a gallop. I think I've made it through. Thanks, Ali.
Thanks very much, Colin. Yeah, that was a canter with lots of information in there. I was just typing. Please pop any questions you have for Ben or Colin here in the chat. We'll give people a few minutes to do that.
Yeah.
And I know that quite a lot of people have been messaging us sort of directly with very specific questions, which is great, and we will work through those, guys. But again, please feel free to pop anything generic that is facing everybody in the chat. We jotted down everything that you've talked to us about in the breakout rooms, so we'll make sure that we're going to be covering that as we go through. But any questions, guys?
No.
There we go.
Well, I've never heard Chief.
I knew they would come.
No, so yeah, Chief is the HMRC system, so everything that's an export should be declared on there. I mean, if it goes through the post office, Ben, I can't remember whether it goes on Chief.
I had a question about that, Colin, sorry.
Okay.
When I spoke to HMRC and I spoke about exporting my products, exporting to Germany, and I spoke about this Chief, and I was informed I didn't need to do Chief because my couriers fill in all the information, because the EORI number will then be put into the system up in HMRC. So when I do my end of year declarations, my accounts, it would all link up correctly. Am I being a bit naive, or is that something that is?
No,
I don't need to do Chief.
No, I think that is correct. So if you can either do customs declarations yourself,
yeah,
or you use an agent, and a courier company is effectively the agent.
Is the agent. Okay.
Is the agent. So the courier company, you know, their role along with a freight forwarder is to take the information you give them. So you say, I need these goods to go to Joe Bloggs.
Yep.
This is his address. Here's the commercial invoice, you know, etc. Process for me, please. So my experience, going back a bit, was selling chemicals around the world. We use UPS. We use their system, and so the people in the office would just log on to UPS. We're selling here. It would generate the paperwork, and would do the stuff, the notification into Chief, and get the approval for the export.
So the approval of the export done, and the products have gone into the country, because that's then into my system, into my EORI up to HMRC. That is my proof of record for them being exported.
You should be able to obtain from the freight forwarder, from the if you need from the the courier people,
yeah,
a document that shows that the goods have left the country. So they should be able to provide you with a proof of export. If so I think from memory, UPS, sometimes you can print something off their system. It might just be worth asking, whoever you deal with, can they, excuse me, can they provide you with a proof of export for each of your orders?
Yeah, you can get. Sorry to take up everyone's time. I'm not big enough to use a DPD or a whatever.
Right.
Then you use a third-party website to send the goods abroad. I don't know if anyone else has that issue at all. Okay, but a proof of export from them, and that will be my records.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
That's good. And thanks for coming online, James, and asking that question. That's fine. And anybody else is welcome to do the same. Hopefully, Francesca, that answers your question as well. So anything else, guys, that you wanted to talk to Ben and Colin about today? Please fire away. whilst people might be typing, I'm just going to let you know that we have session 2 next week, next Tuesday, same time, same place. We will drop you an email after the session today to make sure you've got a link to the recording and to the slides. There's some brilliant links in all of those slides, and I know you're probably going to want to have a look at those and have an explore through. If you need to talk to us in between time, please, you've got Ben and Colin's email in there. The team will be in touch and can help if you need anything answered specifically in between the 2 sessions. Next Tuesday, we are going to have a look at routes to market. We're going to look at international marketing, and we're going to have a look at the use of marketplaces and the use of digital to help get into those markets. So again, really informative session. Next time too. Great, we've got a couple of extra questions. Another question here from Francesca. So if a potential customer asks us how much duty VAT they may have to pay to receive their parcel, where do we find this info, or where do we direct them to?
Okay.
Colin, Ben, are you all right to pick that one up?
Yep. So you go to the final website that we showed. I was just going to see if I could scale my screen. You can go onto the website, you put in the country, the destination, you put in your commodity code, and that should give you the details of what is being charged in terms of duty and what will be charged in terms of VAT, because the VAT is not consistent across the European Union, for instance, and there might be a different sale. And I'm just talking that, obviously America doesn't have VAT, it has something else, etc., etc. But you should there from that website be able to then say, oh, okay, you're going to be charged X amount of this tax, and you'll be charged X amount of duty, and you should then be able to tell them how much they're likely to face as an additional cost. That's right. I mean, if you're selling business to business, then of course within the European Union, then of course the VAT is kind of irrelevant, because the business will claim the VAT back as part of, as all businesses do, as part of their VAT return. But the duty obviously is generally fixed, and you're stuck with paying the duty. Okay.
And what was that web address again, Colin?
Let me quickly go back through my slides. It is www.gov.uk/export-goods.
I'm just popping that in the chat.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yep. No, hyphen. It's not
hyphen, sorry.
Not a forward slash.
Forward, so it's a hyphen. Has everybody got that? So it's a hyphen instead of a forward slash. I thought it hasn't come up as a hyperlink, so I figured I might have got that wrong. But hopefully that's good. We've got another question just coming in here. Thank you, Colin. We've got another question coming in here from Emily. With new rules in Northern Ireland, do I still charge VAT to my Northern Ireland customer?
Yeah. Northern Ireland. Yes, is my. I think from the off the top of my head, because I have, like everybody else, trying to get my head around it. Ben, can you remember exactly?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's still the same with Northern Ireland, still within the UK. Yeah.
I mean, the problem differs, Emily, is if the goods are then going to cross the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. No. So yeah, I think you treat it as a sale within the UK.
Okay. Thanks for that, Colin. As you can tell, everybody's getting their head around this at the same time. So thank you for that, Colin. Thanks. So guys, unless you have any other questions, Colin and Ben will be with us for a few minutes afterwards if you wanted to stay on and speak to them. But I'm going to wrap the session up today. You've been fantastic audience. Thank you so much. Very attentive for a good period of time. We hope the session's been useful. We are, as I said, opening things up week by week, and there's some great content for each session. And again, I hope the value often comes with these things in the breakout rooms as well, and just being able to chat to other businesses. So thanks for your participation in those. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is fully funded by ERDF. We will need a little bit of paperwork from you, and in line with all things changing and all things digital, we should be able to do that electronically with a digital signature from you. So the team will be in touch to get that paperwork pulled together, and we'll just ask you for a quick digital signature at the end. So thank you for that. Colin has very kindly put some more links there in the chat that will specifically answer those questions if you just want a little bit more detail about the Northern Ireland question there, Emily, just so that you're absolutely confident that's the right thing. Then that's really helpful. Thanks, Colin.
That's just the first thing I pulled off Google, which appears to be a policy paper, so it's probably going to be horrible to read, but at least it's a starting point. And
cool. Okay. Well, Ben, Colin, thank you so much. A big round of applause. I know you've been really, really helpful already today. It's great to have the experts in the room. We will pick up those very specific questions that you guys have asked us directly in between the sessions. So we really look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, same time, same place. The links will be coming out to you shortly, along with the recording and the slides. So thanks ever so much, guys. We'll let you go. Happy Tuesday. I hope that's given you lots of food for thought. A big thank you to Erno for giving us that introductory session this morning, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.